Hi everyone, we hope you're doing well. We're hanging in there though honestly, we haven't been getting much sleep lately. Today, we want to answer a question we get a lot: how do we publish our audiobooks? First, we post most audiobooks on Patreon as paid content. They stay paid for a few months. After that, they become free to listen to on Patreon forever. A few weeks later, we post them on other places like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, X. Lately, things have been a bit slow in terms of new members. So we'd love your help. Please share our site with your friends or in places like Facebook groups, Twitter, X, Discord, Reddit, or novel forums. Even one share can really help us grow. Thanks so much for your support. Chapter 1, Ghoul Encounter Japan, Town. A rainy night, like an ink-splashed oil painting. Across the pitch-black sky, fine strands of rain scatter like an artist's brushstrokes, adorning the silent city and making it all the more captivating. Lights reflect off the window panes, creating halos of faint brilliance. Late on a rainy night, there are always few pedestrians on the streets, especially in areas closer to the outskirts. Only the raindrops tapping gently against the ground send out waves of rustling sounds. Amid this rain-soaked darkness, a man well over 1.80 meters in height walks along. One hand holds a black umbrella, the other rests in his pocket. His dark eyes gleam with intensity, anyone meeting his gaze would be cowed by its sharpness. He wears a loose-fitting trench coat, and beneath it, a hooded sweatshirt. Even though the clothing is baggy, one can tell he has a tall, slender frame. His broad, upright shoulders are speckled with droplets, and above them is a lean, handsome face. His eyes are fixed straight ahead, as though forging onward like a battleship. The hurried passers-by only make the young man stand out all the more like a crane in a flock of chickens. Hikaru strolls through the drizzle. He had been out all weekend and only started walking home on foot after dusk. Although it began to rain along the way, he'd checked the weather forecast and brought an umbrella, keeping himself from getting soaked. Even if he had, it wouldn't have mattered much to him. As he continues on, Hikaru suddenly hears a faint cry for help from a nearby alley. When he passes by, the cries become louder and more urgent. Looking carefully, he sees, in the depths of the alley, a beautiful woman. She's wearing a business suit with a short skirt, and on her legs are black tights. But because of the rain and the tears in the fabric, she looks pitifully disheveled, in a strangely alluring way. "What's wrong?" Hikaru asks. From the corner of his eye, he glances at the girl and understands at once. I heard a cat meowing here earlier, so I came to check. But it was so skittish it startled me. I ended up falling, and I twisted my ankle." She looks at him pitifully, cradling her right leg, faint traces of blood showing through. "Little brother, could you help me get home? My house is right next door, just through this alley." The alley is about 50 meters long, lit only by a solitary, dim street lamp at its center. Its hazy glow flickers, as if it might snuff out at any moment. "All right." Hikaru nods. He stretches out a hand and lifts her, and she naturally leans against him. A faint scent of perfume drifts to his nose, and Hikaru can feel something soft pressing against his arm. "Little brother. Once we reach my place, Big Sis will give you a reward, okay? What do you want?" "Big Sis will give it? We're almost there. Just ahead. We're here." He shows no reaction to her suggestive words. Then, halfway along, he suddenly speaks up. At that moment, the street lamp flickers a few times and goes out. The surroundings plunge into darkness so thick you can barely see your hand before your face. "What do you mean, we're here? Big Sis's house is a bit farther." Just as she finishes, the man she's leaning on abruptly lets go, causing her to fall into a puddle. "You!" In the darkness, anger and puzzlement flash through her eyes. But before she can say more, Hikaru speaks. "Stop pretending. There's only the two of us here." "Well, actually just me, plus you filthy ghoul." Upon hearing that, the woman instantly drops her act. Her pale face takes on a cold, hard expression. "When did you figure out what I am?" "Right from the start. The stench of blood on you is so strong that neither rain nor cosmetics can hide it." "You noticed from the beginning?" She freezes, then parts her cracked lips to reveal sharp teeth. "In that case, I have nothing more to hide. But before you become my meal, tell me if you've known all along, why walk straight into the trap?" She licks her lips, her eyes fixed greedily on the young man in front of her, already calculating the best way to enjoy her feast. "First, I can't just ignore the cry of a woman in distress. Second, maybe the one who's falling into a trap isn't the prey, but the hunter." She pauses at that. "Are you an exorcist? A jujutsu sorcerer? Or one of those human doves?" She's beginning to suspect the young man isn't normal. Yet she also knows she didn't choose blindly, whether an exorcist, sorcerer, or one of those so-called doves, They all have a certain distinctive aura or use weapons made from the flesh of ghouls. She senses none of that from Hikaru, which should mean he's just an ordinary human being. Chapter 2, Not an ordinary world. Since you've already seen through me, there's no point in pretending anymore. Be a good boy and become my meal, at least then you won't suffer as much. With a sinister grin, the woman's once normal eyes turn a shade of crimson. The kagn inside her body rapidly expands, tearing through flesh and clothing. Thin strands of blood cling to her skin, giving her a bizarre, grotesque appearance. A ghoul's kagn serves as both their weapon and a manifestation of their inhuman biology, tough as steel, and coupled with physical abilities far beyond those of ordinary people. Normal blades don't faze them. To a typical human, running into a ghoul is a death sentence. Kinda reminds me of Dr. Octopus. Hikaru murmured under his breath. The woman didn't hear him, as the rain was pouring harder by the second. Hey. Little brother, Big Sis is going to eat every last piece of flesh off your bones, bit by bit. Having returned to her true form, the woman found Hikaru's scent even more enticing. Saliva mixed with rainwater began to trickle from her mouth. She advanced on Hikaru at a leisurely pace, confident he had no chance to escape. Like many predators that enjoy toying with their prey, she was no exception. The victim's final struggles only make the meat firmer and tastier. Hikaru said nothing. He simply withdrew the hand that had been in his pocket. A faint glimmer flashed and suddenly, a silver longsword, shaped like a medieval knight's blade, appeared in his palm. He gripped the sword with ease, its weight seemingly negligible. Expressionless, he gazed at the woman before him. Hikaru was not a native of this world. He had come here, soul and memories intact. Even his body was originally his own, simply granted a new identity in this place. Of course, he was still an orphan, but at the age of 12, he had bound himself to a golden finger, a mysterious cheat-like ability. He didn't know its origins. It gave him a starter gift pack, from which he obtained the Demon Slayer Holy Sword now in his hand, and also granted him an ability called Heaven Rewards Diligence. That ability works like the protagonist's talent in a Xianxia novel, letting Hikaru keep improving without limit, in anything he attempts. Even if he fully masters a certain skill, he can push past its peak to grow even stronger, whether it's physical constitution, swordsmanship, magic, cursed energy, or any sort of artistic skill, calligraphy, painting, singing, and yes, even bedroom arts. Once he'd bonded with this system and learned from the Golden Finger that this was a mixed anime fusion world. Hikaru abandoned most of his free time amusements and devoted himself fully to training. Ordinary people need months of hard work to see results, but his Golden Finger let Hikaru see tangible daily progress. Even at a young age, he had developed 8-pack ABS and a perfect physique towering among the relatively short locals, like a crane in a flock of chickens. This cheat-like ability had one other core feature, the World Crossing Gate. World Crossing Gate allows travel between different worlds. Requires the energy gauge to reach 100% before activation. Once activated, the energy gradually depletes. When it hits 0, you are automatically forced to leave the current world. You can choose to depart earlier, but you can only reactivate the gate once it's fully recharged. Part of why Hikaru could remain so calm when facing a ghoul was thanks to his past experiences. Right after binding with the system, the World Crossing Gate's energy stood at 100%, and his first destination was the Campione universe. Early on, he struggled a great deal, but ultimately succeeded in becoming an auxiliary apprentice in the prestigious Italian magic order, the Bronze Black Cross. With Heaven Rewards Diligence. It took him just a few months to learn all the sword and magic arts taught by the external division of that magical organization. Had the gate's energy not run out, he would have been able to attain the honorary rank of Great Knight. An advanced title for magicians. Though it's not exactly rare, for a mere 12-year-old it would have been extraordinary. Across all the magical associations in southern Europe, only 2 other prodigies from Bronze Black Cross and Copper Black Cross surpassed him in raw talent, but Hikaru never crossed paths with them and knew little about them. When Hikaru saw his gate's energy nearing depletion, he faked his own death during a mission to eradicate a group of cultists, left no body behind, and pulled off a flawless disappearing act. No one knew how long it might take to refill that energy once he was gone. After that, he took up life in the grand anime fusion world, settling into a second chance at high school. He chose to attend classes for a very specific reason. The school itself was special. Its name was Kwa Academy, and among its student body were many familiar names: Ryaz Greenmurray, Akeno Himejima, Sai Hyautu, Tukekirishima, Misakurajima, and so on. Likewise, this world teemed with hidden monsters, ghouls, cursed spirits, vengeful ghosts, and devil kind that rose to the level of the supernatural. Chapter 3, Not an Ordinary Person. By using his cheat ability, not only could Hikaru improve through daily training, but battling enemies likewise increased his strength. Because of this, He never shied away from unexpected incidents. In fact, if something were to happen, he'd be quite happy to dive right in. Even though these thoughts raced through his mind, in reality, only about 3 seconds had passed. Seeing Hikaru stand there without moving, the woman assumed he had been boasting earlier and was now paralyzed by fear, especially since she was showing no sign of backing down. With her prey unable to escape, she felt no need to rush and began thinking about where to start feasting. She ran her tongue over her lips, eyeing the man's handsome face and impressive build. Maybe she ought to have a bit of fun with him before eating him? Yes, that would be SSCH. Under cover of darkness, a faint gleam flashed. A long sword, faintly glowing, suddenly appeared in the man's hand. Its radiance was subtle, yet in the pitch-black night it stood out clearly. Half the blade was exposed, seemingly sheathed in a thin barrier that kept the rain at bay. From that sword, the woman sensed something unusual. Or rather, any normal human mind would be spinning into overdrive after watching a sword appear out of nowhere. Who are you? Having no grasp of what was happening, the female ghoul felt panic rising in her chest. What on earth is going on? But Hikaru clearly wasn't going to answer. He had no intention of showing mercy to a man-eating monster. His earlier kindness helping her up had merely been a test. Unfortunately, the woman had failed that test. Now, she would face only death. Seeing that Hikaru didn't respond, the ghoul's gaze shifted as she launched a sneak attack. From behind her, Kagen tentacles reminiscent of Dr. Octopus shot forward like venomous barbs. They were as hard as steel and could easily pierce thin metal plating. Yet Hikaru simply tilted sideways, dodging with casual grace. He didn't even move his feet, the umbrella in his left hand remained steady. Had this been the Hikaru of his earliest days in this world, he would have been skewered outright. But after spending months studying at a magic society, successfully leaving it behind, and continually hunting cursed spirits and ghouls in this world, his abilities had advanced by leaps and bounds. In his eyes, a ghoul's attack felt 100 times slower, so slow even a grandma could dodge. What's going on? She couldn't believe he had avoided her ambush without even seeming to try. Without a word, Hikaru took a single step forward, not waiting for her next move. In a single stroke, he sliced off both her arms. Ah! Screaming in pain, the woman stared at him in horror. Damn it! How could this be happening? She was supposed to be the hunter, and he was merely a careless snack. But unexpectedly, he turned out to be such a terrifying opponent. A hidden exorcist? Or something else? At any rate, the female ghoul now had only one thought: run. Her Kagen braced against the ground, propelling her like a grasshopper 7 or 8 meters straight up to a nearby rooftop. She leapt again, fleeing madly into the distance. She didn't care if anyone saw her, she just had to get away from this place. After running for around 4 or 5 kilometers, she finally reached a wooded area far from the suburbs. Her face pale, she looked back and found no sign of pursuit. Perhaps she'd shaken him off. Utterly spent, she collapsed to the ground. Her arms had stopped bleeding, but even with a ghoul's regenerative power, they wouldn't heal any time soon. And she was desperately low on energy. Without sustenance, she couldn't hope to regenerate. That damned man. Damn him. Damn him. She felt only fear and hatred toward Hikaru. If not for him, she could have easily grabbed a random person off the street and feasted. Now she hadn't eaten a thing, and worse, she'd lost both arms. You sure ran fast. But did you really think you could get away? A voice drifted out of the darkness. Startled, the ghoul whipped around, only to see Hikaru, who had somehow arrived behind her. He strolled forward with unhurried calm. Moonlight filtered through the canopy, casting dappled shadows that shifted with each step he took. Seeing this, her soul nearly flew from her body. She tried to bolt again, but all at once her vision seemed to rise skyward, then tumble around. In that instant, she caught a glimpse of a bleeding corpse. Huh? That's? Only in her final moment did she realize, that's my body. Her severed head rolled to the edge of a small pond. Hikaru gazed at the woman's lifeless eyes with disgust. In truth, ghouls in this fused world differ from their originals. Due to mixed elements, they can long since eat normal food just like humans. But some deviants still crave the thrill of cannibalism. As far as Hikaru was concerned, such creatures all deserved eradication. He raised his head in silence. With a casual slash, he cut off her Kagen and shredded the sack that formed it. The body, which had still been twitching moments before, immediately went cold. Chapter 4, As about 10 minutes after Hikaru left, several figures appeared in succession near the ghoul's corpse. They were all wearing raincoats. Now and then, lightning lit up the scene, making their faces momentarily visible. Each was a young woman with a distinct look. Judging by their features, none of them seemed very old. President, it looks like we got here a bit late. One of the girls spoke. A few locks of black hair peeked out from beneath her raincoat's hood. She had the gentle features typically seen in someone of East Asian descent. Her eyes were clear and bright, like a ray of early morning light filtering through woodland. Her skin was like a newly bloomed petal fair with a hint of pink. So it appears. And this one died from a slash wound. The cut is smooth and clean, whoever did it must be a skilled swordsman. Confronted by the cold, dismembered corpse, another girl squatted and carefully inspected it. Wounds that most people would balk at were, to her, as commonplace as wildflowers on the roadside. I wonder who was responsible for this. Likely not one of the human doves. Normal people aren't that strong and tend to operate in groups. After killing a ghoul, they would protect the scene and wait for the cleanup crew. So, our suspect might be an exorcist or a jujutsu sorcerer. Ryaz, didn't we hear that a few fallen angels had sneaked in recently? Maybe it's one of the stray exorcists they brought along, said the girl named Aiko no Himejima. She and the girl called Ryaz were both students at Kwa Academy, at least on the surface. In reality, they were devils with concealed identities. But unlike the bloodthirsty devils of television and film, modern devils are outwardly indistinguishable from humans and maintain a society and magical order far more advanced than what humans possess. Devils, fallen angels, alongside certain human factions and other powers, share dominion over this world. Kwa Town is part of the Devil's territory, under the rule of the highborn devil Ryaz Greenery, heiress to the House of Greenery. Assisting her in managing the town are her gathered servants. The ghoul was chased here and killed. The culprit is strong, and the fight barely disturbed the surrounding area, observed Konatu with an impassive expression. The petite, white-haired girl inspecting the corpse looked as if she could be a middle schooler, in stark contrast to the more mature builds of Aiko and Ryaz. I don't sense any holy aura, so whoever did this probably isn't an exorcist, remarked Yodo Kiba, the only male present, scratching his head. Since we can't find the one responsible, let's head back. At least we know from what we see here that the killer has no apparent ill intent toward regular humans, Ryaz said, standing up with a troubled look on her face. In recent years, for reasons unknown, strays, be they devils, ghouls, or exorcists, had been on the rise. And that's not even counting evil spirits, cursed spirits, and other monstrosities born from humanity itself. There had been a steady uptick in attacks every so often, leaving her feeling overwhelmed. If it weren't for some help from human factions, she and her small group of servants would have had a hard time maintaining order in such a large city. Kwa Academy, Occult Research Club. This was the base of operations for Ryaz and her servants. Ryaz, about the ghoul we found dead earlier, I have a guess. We might actually know the one who did it, Aiko said after they returned, drying her still damp hair with a towel post-shower. At those words, a figure came to Ryaz's mind. You're talking about that transfer student, Hikaru? Ryaz turned her head, letting her crimson hair sway gracefully behind her. Her waist-length hair, a vivid red, made for a striking contrast against her pale skin. Beneath the short skirt of her school uniform extended a smooth, flawless leg, evidence of a healthy fitness routine. When that name came up, Ryaz recalled the first time she heard it. For reasons she couldn't quite explain, her feelings had been complicated. Remember back in the Kendo Club, when Yodo Kiba had a match with Hikaru? After 5 or 6 moves, Kiba lost, Aiko said, her tone tinged with admiration. We all know how skilled Kiba is with a sword, yet he still lost. Without that match, I wouldn't have known such a person existed at this school. Back then, Ryaz, you even had Konko try to recruit him as your servant. Do you still remember what he said in response? Aiko asked. Of course I do. How can a true man ever bow his head to another? When Konko had delivered that reply to Ryaz, she'd been utterly stunned. It was the first time anyone had ever refused her so bluntly. Chapter 5, Terminus Estate. Every time Ryaz remembered it, her emotions grew complicated. Servants were her friends, practically her family. She never treated them as subordinates or tools the way many other devils did. But at that time, Hikaru's words had left her at a loss. Still, she later heard that her friend Suna Saitri had likewise taken notice of Hikaru's talent and sent her own queen to recruit him, only to suffer the same rejection. We'll just keep an eye on him. Don't cut off contact completely in the meantime. Ryaz sighed. Oh, right, about those fallen angels who snuck in here. When do we plan to make a move? Aiko no Himejima asked. As she spoke, the gentle look in her eyes faded, replaced by a hint of killing intent. No rush. Let's observe what they're plotting in secret first, and prepare accordingly. Ryaz replied firmly. Meanwhile, while Ryaz and Aiko were conversing late into the night, their so-called culprit, Hikaru, had already returned home. His place was a single-occupant villa which, for Japan, was large by any standard. At the moment, he was the only person living there. Well, there was one other occupant, but not a human. After Hikaru set his bag down, a cluster of silvery light suddenly emerged from his body. As it sparkled, the shape of a sword began to materialize, then quickly transformed into the figure of a young girl. She had silver hair and flawless skin, with a petite build, appearing roughly elementary school-aged. Her name was Terminus Estate. When Hikaru first obtained her, he was quite stunned. Most people who transmigrate might receive some powerful gear or a companion. He got both in one package. Thanks for all your help today, Estate. Hikaru smiled gently, speaking with evident warmth in his tone as he placed his hand on Estate's soft head. If it can help you, Onyai-chan, then it's no trouble at all. When Estate first manifested, she came with full affection for Hikaru and would listen to anything he said except when it came to her over-the-knee black stockings. Even Hikaru couldn't force her to remove them. Aside from that, she didn't mind being there in every other respect. He wasn't used to her little quirks at first, but after a few years of living together, they understood each other extremely well. Out in public, they simply posed as brother and sister. Despite their differing hair colors, his black, hers silver, in this mixed anime world, such things certainly didn't exclude them from being siblings. After all, there was that certain father whose two daughters had different hair, Eri and Marina, and they were still blood relatives. Onyai-chan, what do you want to eat tonight? Estate's face remained emotionless as she spoke, giving her the appearance of a lifeless machine. But Hikaru was already used to her personality. She only looked cold on the outside, unlike a true emotionless girl. She still had normal human feelings, she just expressed them differently. Let's have steamed buns tonight. I've still got some filling left over from yesterday. Hikaru said. Thanks to his cheat ability, heaven rewards diligence. He could master almost anything he practiced. Skills like cooking, which take normal people years to refine, took him only 2.5 months to reach Michelin chef levels. He also brought painting, singing, writing, driving, boxing, and more to pinnacle levels, achievements outstripping even long-time masters in those fields. Still, Hikaru never showed off. Having carried this advantage since childhood and trained for years, he felt there was little worth bragging about, just that he was, well, a bit stronger than the average person. After suggesting steamed buns for dinner, Estate's eyes narrowed in contentment. She followed him into the kitchen to help out. They wrapped the filling in dough, steamed it in a pot, and finished after about 40 minutes. So hot. Estate took a piping hot white bun and carefully bit into it. Being sensitive to heat, she soon opened her mouth and started blowing on it, making Hikaru chuckle affectionately. He handed her a glass of ice water. Watching such a cute display, Hikaru felt his tension melt away. The path of transmigration could be lonely, especially given how reserved he was in showcasing his abilities. Estate's arrival had undeniably brought him much-needed warmth. At night, this silver-haired Lilai would even transform into her human form to warm his bed, hugging him until he fell asleep. That was why Hikaru treated her not as a weapon, but more like a genuine sister. At the dinner table, noticing Estate quietly spitting out a few pieces of the bun's filling, Hikaru spoke up with mild exasperation. Being picky with food isn't good for you. Ginger is beneficial in small amounts. Okay. Estate nodded without expression. Then, pinching her nose as if swallowing poison, she forced down the morsels containing shredded ginger. Seeing her act so dramatically, Hikaru couldn't help but laugh. Last time I didn't have ginger, you insisted that I should. Because it tastes different if it doesn't have ginger. All right, once you're done eating, get some rest. I've got school tomorrow. Okay. Chapter 6, School. At night, after the two of them took a bath together, Estate clung to Hikaru and fell asleep in his arms. They didn't wake up until sunrise the next day. Even then, Estate still appeared half asleep because, as the Demon Slayer Holy Sword, she needed sleep to recharge her energy. In her original world, a highest-ranking spirit like Estate would return to the spirit realm to recover. But for now, Hikaru's strength couldn't fully accommodate Estate's manifested form. Hence, she usually stayed dormant within the sword, emerging only when Hikaru needed to fight, or when they were alone together, or simply whenever she wanted to appear. Sunlight scattered across the streets in flecks of gold. Office workers and students filled the roads. Girls wearing Kwa Academy uniforms exuded youthful vigor, a sight that made passers-by linger. Yet the gazes of these girls, so admired by others, converged upon a single male student, Hikaru. He was already good-looking, and not just by high school standards, even among adults, few were taller than him. Moreover, his aura had changed dramatically after 2.5 years of training. Though he wasn't overtly arrogant, he was noticeably extraordinary. Add to that his top-ranking scores across the board, and it was hard for him to stay under the radar. Not only had the entire school heard of him, even students from other schools knew his name. Another reason for his immense popularity was that Kwa Academy used to be an all-girls school, Although now co-ed, they maintained strict admission standards. Consequently, delinquent youths who couldn't get in would often loiter nearby, harassing the female students. One time, Hikaru happened to be passing by and intervened. The troublemakers, unwilling to accept their defeat, returned with dozens of reinforcements to ambush him after school only to be soundly beaten by him alone. From then on, he became a hero in the eyes of the girls at Kwa Academy. Once Hikaru got into the classroom, he finally escaped the constant attention of all the female students. He felt somewhat helpless. Being too perfect was a burden in its own way. Ugh, here comes our main character. Now all the girls in class will be fixated on him again. Damn it, how can anyone be that perfect? If only I could be like him. Wake up, dude. Don't dream. We can forget about dating any of the girls in class. As long as he's around, we haven't got a prayer. Boo-hoo. Only a handful of boys were in the class, and they huddled together, discussing him in whispers. To most of them, Hikaru was the enemy of all men. But they only dared to complain in private. Though Hikaru heard them, he didn't mind. It wasn't on purpose, but a man like him shone wherever he went like a blazing sun. Even if he did nothing, he still radiated that intense brightness. Unless he intentionally hid himself, there was no place his light wouldn't reach. He pulled out a book and quietly flipped through it, ignoring everyone else's stares. But he was well aware that quite a few people in this class were paying attention to him. Aside from nameless onlookers, there were three worth noting: Kirishima, Ariri, and Konatu. From his knowledge of the original works, Hikaru knew who they really were. Kirishima was a ghoul. Yet like devils, there were good and bad ghouls, and she happened to be one who worked part-time in a cafe, keeping her identity secret. As for Ariri, they were old acquaintances, having known each other since middle school. Amusingly, their first meeting wasn't some cliché hero saves the girl scenario. Rather, it was because she'd been passionate about anime culture since childhood and aspired to be a doujin artist. Unfortunately for her, both her storyboarding and artwork lost out completely to Hikaru's. Thanks to his apex-level artistic skill, and a lifetime of studying the masters before his transmigration, any casual sketch of his could set a viewer's blood racing. Ariri, biting her lip in frustration, had no choice but to concede defeat. Still, she was strong-willed and proud, so every so often she'd create something new and ask Hikaru to look at it, hoping he'd praise it. Now, judging by her furtive glances, she must have finished another piece recently. But there'd be no time in school for him to check it out. As for Konatu, she was a member of the occult research club under the Devil Noble Rya's Greenery. She had once asked him to become a devil servant, but he turned her down. Hikaru was sure Ryaz wouldn't give up so easily. If he were in her shoes, he wouldn't either. The bell rang. Entering the classroom with a severe expression was Mifagirasu, wearing a stylishly mature outfit with black stockings and light pink hair. Alright, everyone. Today we'll be having a pop quiz. Huh? Complaints erupted instantly across the room. Konatu and Ariri both looked aghast. The former had been pulling all-nighters gaming, while the latter had spent her nights drawing and analyzing other art for inspiration. Neither had done any studying at all. Chapter 7, An Invitation. Afternoon. As usual, Hikaru headed to the school cafeteria for lunch. Not very tasty. That was his verdict on the cafeteria fare. For most students, the food was decent enough, but Hikaru's palate had long since been spoiled by his own cooking, so the cafeteria food was merely passable. He didn't bother making his own lunch and reheating it at noon. This simply wasn't his habit. Besides, a state usually slept during the day, so there was no need to summon her just for mealtime. While Hikaru was quietly eating, two figures entered the cafeteria one after another. After getting their meals, they looked around briefly, then walked straight toward him. Wherever they passed, the few boys in the area grew anxious, and some of the girls cast sighing, admiring glances. One of these newcomers had silky golden hair like a natural elf, with emerald green eyes set in a flawless, snow-white face, an almost perfect picture. Her figure was petite yet well-proportioned, and under her skirt were slender, shapely legs clad in black stockings. The other girl was the complete opposite in coloring. Her hair was silvery white like moonlight, and her amber eyes shone intently, though her expressionless face softened her overall impression. Her fair complexion and petite build made her seem like a delicate doll. Two distinct fragrances drifted over as they flanked Hikaru on either side. Incidentally, despite Hikaru's popularity, no other girl ever dared sit near him. Even the outgoing, flashy girls of the Shibuya style hesitated, intimidated by his aura. What's more, anyone who did sit with him risked being skewered by the jealous gazes of his many admirers. But when these two approached, hushed whispers arose all around. Everyone knew that Ariri had been Hikaru's classmate since middle school, and Konatu had also interacted with him ever since she enrolled. Konko, known for her athletic prowess in class, had been defeated across the board by Hikaru, which brought them a little closer somewhat unexpectedly. They noticed each other only when they were close. Ayuri halted, looking slightly taken aback by Konko's appearance at the same time and place. Inwardly, she was annoyed why choose now to show up. Konko merely gave Ayuri a calm glance, as though unmoved, then placed her tray down and sat opposite Hikaru. Ayuri looked as if she'd been struck by lightning, discreetly bared a tiny thing in challenge, and then pretended it was all a coincidence as she took a seat nearby. Hikaru, watching them, found it all rather amusing. Even without guessing, he could tell Ayuri must be feeling quite vexed at the moment. He then turned his attention to the silver-haired girl in front of him. "Konko, are you here to return that game disc I lent you?" Hikaru asked with a slight smile. "Yes." Konko nodded and handed him the CD. It was Cyberpunk 2077. She had been staying up all night to play it, which was why she hadn't reviewed her schoolwork and had done poorly on that day's quiz. The thought of it made her poke at her food in frustration. A few seconds of silence followed. Hikaru didn't press her further, he simply waited. "After school, the president would like to invite you to the Occult Research Club." "You mean Rya's Creamery?" Hikaru's gaze fell upon the girl in front of him. Konko's superior was a pure-blood devil noble from the underworld Rya's Creamery, heiress to the Creamery family and younger sister to the current Lucifer. She oversaw everything in Kwa Town. She had first invited Hikaru to become her servant soon after he entered high school, but he had refused. Hikaru was certain that a stubborn lady like Ryaz wouldn't give up so easily. If he were in her position, he probably wouldn't either. That said, he had no desire to be bound by anyone, regardless of how well Ryaz might treat her servants. "Will you accept?" Konko asked. She was only here to deliver the message, she wasn't going to force him. Ryaz had explicitly instructed her not to use any strong-arm tactics. "Sure." Hikaru nodded. He realized they hardly spoke most of the time, so Ryaz's taking the initiative to invite him now meant she likely had something important to discuss. It worked out for him. He had something he wanted to see Ryaz about, too. Seeing that he agreed, Konko simply gave a small nod and continued eating quietly, rather like an actual cat. Ayuri, sitting nearby, looked on anxiously. Chapter 8, Blade Wounds. Kwa Academy has 2 school buildings in total. Even though the new facility is now in use, the old one hasn't been demolished, rather, it serves as a space for club activities. To the left is the Occult Research Club, to the right, the Student Council. After school, Konko led Hikaru there. The old building stands amid a cluster of trees. Usually, no one comes by, and there are even rumors of the 7 wonders of the school floating around. Though it only has 2 floors, both the exterior and interior corridors are kept meticulously clean. On the 2nd floor, Konko walked ahead and opened the door, allowing a glimpse inside. The room's interior looked like a study. Several bookshelves lined the walls, while the center had an office-like feel. But aside from the furniture, the walls, floor, and even the ceiling were covered in esoteric symbols, devil runes scattered throughout every corner. Most eye-catching of all was a large red magic circle dominating most of the floor. Hikaru knew it was a dimension array connecting directly to the underworld. With permission, one could travel there instantly via this circle. Ordinary devils couldn't use it, only high-class devils qualified to have one. "Welcome, welcome." As Hikaru stepped in, a red-haired beauty approached. Her fiery hair shimmered like embers under the lights, and her voluptuous yet shapely figure was truly captivating even in a standard school uniform. She radiated a unique allure. Rya's Creamery. Her emerald eyes held a hint of a smile, not necessarily because she was thrilled, but more so as a product of her refined upbringing. Behind her stood a dark-haired woman whose figure was no less striking. In contrast to Ryaz's Western features, this woman seemed more reserved. When she smiled, her eyes narrowed to gentle slits, creating a graceful impression. Her bare legs extended from beneath her skirt, drawing the eye with their slender elegance. "We meet again, Hikaru. I suppose we don't need introductions, do we?" Ryaz politely nodded her greeting. Respect goes both ways, and Hikaru, though human, had power enough to warrant that courtesy. Hikaru likewise assumed a polite, business-like manner. He shook her hand briefly and let go. "I don't think so. I'm just a nobody, after all, whereas you, Ryaz-san, are the heiress of the House of Creamery. And with your looks, you're not easily forgotten. Next time, if there's a chance, you could visit my place." Hikaru never hesitated to treat a truly beautiful woman kindly. Besides, he had no quarrel with Ryaz, and he knew plenty of future plot developments would involve her. Ryaz seemed to pick up on the unspoken meaning in his invitation but didn't refuse. She nodded in acknowledgement and said, "Kano, the tea, please. It's already brewed some excellent Westlake dragon well imported from the east." Aiko presented the tea with a warm smile. Her demeanor mirrored Ryaz's. For a welcome guest, they showed equal hospitality. Besides, Hikaru was rather famous at school, and Aiko greatly admired his abilities, even putting aside everything else. "Ryaz-san, do you enjoy tea?" Hikaru asked. "I had trouble at first. But ever since you rejected me that time, I've grown to like the bitterness." Her subtext was obvious. Even though several months had passed, Ryaz still hadn't gotten over Hikaru's initial refusal. It was plain that she hadn't given up on inviting him to be her servant. But for the moment, she had no suitable reason to press him again. Forcing him was out of the question. That was something Ryaz would never do, which in turn was why Hikaru was willing to hold a conversation with her. As for enticements, Ryaz had already asked Konko to persuade him, promising comfortable employment in the underworld, lifetime benefits, flexible hours, generous perks, and low work intensity, etc. None of it tempted Hikaru much. If Ryaz had offered herself as a concubine, he might have considered it, but that obviously wasn't on the table. After some pleasantries, Hikaru sipped his tea and got straight to the point. "So, what's the reason for inviting me here this time?" "It's like this." Seeing him initiate the conversation, Ryaz wasted no time and posed her question directly. "Recently, I've received many reports from my familiars about murders. Every victim had blade-inflicted wounds. I suspect you're responsible." "Yes. That's me," Hikaru admitted without hesitation. "But let's be clear, I didn't kill people, I killed monsters." "Right, I know. Otherwise, you can be sure I wouldn't be greeting you so warmly." Ryaz gave a quick nod and a smile. As the manager of Kuat Town, there was no way she'd let a true murderer roam free. Chapter 9, Cooperation. "And because of that, I have a proposal. I think you might find it interesting." "Let's hear it," Hikaru replied. "It's like this. You remember when I had Konko invite you before? Though you refused, I later reflected on it and realized that not everyone needs to become a devil. So, I decided to let it go." Ryaz spoke in a serious tone. Though she didn't show it outright, Hikaru's pride was palpable. A person with his level of skill and talent wouldn't just join her ranks without reason. A smart choice. If this is still about that same matter today, then I don't think we need to meet again in the future. Hikaru's tone was calm but firm. Ryaz felt a slight tightness in her chest. She had initially intended to ask again, but after catching the undertone of Hikaru's words, she decisively abandoned that idea. Hikaru was different from her current servants. Konko, Aiko, Kiba, and even Gasper had all been homeless or carried deep-seated grudges, reasons that made them willing to accept her invitation. Hikaru, though alone, was powerful, lived comfortably, and even owned a large house. Without any external pressure or desire, how could she possibly recruit him? Aiko and Konko remained silent. They already understood Hikaru's personality well and knew he meant no offense. "Here's the deal, we'd like to collaborate with you." Ryaz cleared her throat before continuing. "As the ruler of Kuat Town, I'm sure you're aware that ever since about 2.5 years ago, crime in this city has been escalating. Ghouls, cursed spirits, ghosts, rogue exorcists, and stray devils, reports of their activity surface every few days. But as you can see, my available personnel are limited to Kiba, Konko, and Aiko. Just keeping an eye on the angels and fallen angels already takes all our effort. Even if we split up, we're still stretched thin. That's why I hope you can assist us." "What are the details?" Hikaru asked. This was actually quite in line with what he had been thinking. He then saw Ryaz take out an obsidian badge engraved with the Greenery family crest. "This is a communication tool. If an emergency occurs, a familiar will contact you. You're free to choose whether to respond. If you complete a request, we'll compensate you. And if you prefer a different form of reward, that can be arranged as well." Hearing this, Hikaru nodded. "All right, I'll hold on to this, then." Seeing him accept the badge, Ryaz was visibly relieved. After all, this truly solved a major issue for her. Hikaru's assistance wasn't about recruitment, it was purely a business arrangement. "If that's all, I'll be heading out," Hikaru said. "Oh, right, we also prepared a gift for a State-chan. Please accept it." Just as Hikaru was aware of their secrets, he had never hidden a State's existence from them either. Ryaz and Sunasaitri both knew that Hikaru had a sword familiar and that she could take human form and was quite adorable. "Then I'll thank you on a State's behalf." Hikaru didn't stand on ceremony. After that, he got up and left. Seeing this, Konko gave Ryaz a look before following him out. As the door closed behind them, Aiko narrowed her eyes, glancing at the now visibly relaxed Ryaz before chuckling. "Ryaz, have you really given up? What else could I do? No matter what terms I offer, Hikaru will never accept. If I were in his position, I'd do the same." Ryaz leaned back against the sofa, sighing wearily. The movement caused her ample chest to rise and fall in a way that was undeniably eye-catching. "You've grown, Ryaz. You're not the same girl as before," Aiko said approvingly. "If this were the old you, you would have tried every possible method to make him join you. This is called retreating to advance. Blocking him won't work, so I'm choosing a softer approach. If I pushed him too hard and ended up making him an enemy, I'd regret it." Ryaz sighed. "Besides, he truly is exceptional even without his combat abilities. Actually, I have an idea. If you were the one to bring it up, he might actually say yes," Aiko said with a mysterious smile. "What is it?" "Simple, why not just marry Hikaru? Pillow talk is the most effective persuasion, after all. You wouldn't even need to form a servant contract. As the son-in-law of the Greenery family, he'd naturally stand by your side, wouldn't he?" "That joke isn't funny, Aiko." Ryaz shot her a glare. But if she were to be completely honest, the suggestion did have some merit. The only problem? It would cost her quite a lot. Specifically, herself. Chapter 10, Guest. Outside the school. Konko walked alongside Hikaru. "Hikaru, do you not like the president?" Out of nowhere, the girl blurted out this question. "There are many kinds of like. Which one are you referring to?" Hikaru countered. "Just ordinary liking, whether you have a good impression of someone or a bad one. The president doesn't have any ill intentions, she's just not very mature. But she will become an excellent high-class devil and head of her family in the future." After hearing this, Hikaru suddenly reached out and patted Konko's head. "The word mature doesn't quite suit you, Konko. I know. But the president works hard. I just hope you don't dislike her." "Okay, I can agree to that. But have you been playing too much Cyberpunk 2077? Who did you learn this from?" Hikaru had found the source of the issue. Normally, Konko wasn't this talkative. Hearing that, Konko went silent. Clearly, Hikaru had hit the mark. As an experienced gamer, it was common to unconsciously mimic the behaviors of characters from a recently completed game. Usually, this phase took about a week to wear off. After all, reality and games were different. "By the way, did you know it has a spin-off anime?" Hikaru asked. They were nearing the school gates, and thanks to his conversation with Ryaz, the area was now mostly empty. "Hikaru, do you have it? I couldn't get it on the early release date." Konko's eyes lit up with excitement. "I do, but it's at my house. Do you want to come and get it?" "Yes." She agreed instantly, without hesitation. Back at the old school building, Aiko watched the two leave, then turned back to Ryaz with a teasing smile. "Looks like Konko is more charming than we are." Konko's appeal lies in her innocence. Very few boys can resist that kind of cute girl. Ryaz replied sullenly. Then, resting her chin on the table, she murmured softly, "I'm so jealous." The thought of her still lingering engagement made her sigh in frustration. At Hikaru's home. "Excuse me." At the entrance, Konko took off her school-issued leather shoes, revealing her small feet clad in white socks, then slipped into a pair of indoor slippers. She followed Hikaru into the living room. "Make yourself comfortable. I'll go get the disc. Stay for dinner." "Okay." After answering, Konko put down her bag, walked over to the couch, and leaned back, casually picking up the remote to turn on the TV. She seemed quite familiar with the place. Just then a faint presence stirred behind her, causing Konko's heart to skip a beat. The next moment, a silver-haired sword spirit appeared behind her. "Here to play again today?" Konko nodded slightly at the silver-haired lily in front of her, her usual expressionless demeanor returning. After becoming close with Hikaru, she naturally grew close to Estate as well. "This is a little gift. I bought it from the underworld." Konko pulled out a present, a classic snack from the underworld. Estate watched as Konko unwrapped it, and before she knew it, her mouth started to water. After sleeping for most of the day, she was just beginning to feel hungry. When Hikaru returned, he was greeted by the sight of two supposedly emotionless girls munching on snacks. From a distance, someone might even mistake them for sisters. After all, they both had silver hair, both had a silent, emotionless, expressionless personality, and the only real difference was that Konko was slightly taller than Estate. Here, this spin-off anime is best enjoyed alone at home. It's only 10 episodes, so it's not too long. Konko took the disc and carefully placed it in her bag. Then, as Estate was busy eating, Konko suddenly remembered something and asked, "Hikaru, how's your magic training going?" "I've managed to refine some magic power and can now use basic spells," Hikaru replied. Thanks to his Heaven Rewards diligence ability, he had asked Konko for guidance on magic after they became familiar with each other. In this world, magic was different from how it was commonly defined in other worlds. It wasn't a broad term, rather, it was an ability exclusive to devils and their servants. Humans could use magic, but only if they formed a contract with a devil to generate magic within themselves, performed a special ritual to implant a magic circle into their bodies, or created magic circuits to become a magician. Hikaru, however, didn't need any of that. After learning the training method from Konko, he had tried using his inner cursed energy to generate magic power and, naturally, he succeeded. That's amazing. Konko's eyes widened slightly. Though Hikaru had spoken casually, anyone with knowledge of magic would understand just how difficult this feat was. Moreover, she knew that Hikaru would never sign a contract, implant magic circuits, or use magic formations. For a mere human to wield magic without any external resources, this level of talent would be considered genius even in the underworld. Chapter 11, Cultivation. Dinner consisted of black bone chicken soup and stewed beef. For Konko, who lived alone in Japan, this was already a very sumptuous meal. But for Hikaru, this was just the norm. Outside of school, he couldn't bring himself to settle for mediocre food at home. Besides, he had a little foodie to feed. So good. With that simple remark, Konko never stopped eating. After about 20 minutes, she had already finished 4 bowls of rice. Her previously flat belly was now round and full. Anyone who didn't know better might have thought Hikaru had done something to her. A state wasn't to be outdone, either. Normally she couldn't eat that much, but today she found herself unconsciously competing with Konko. After the meal, Konko volunteered to wash the dishes. Once she was done, she said goodbye to Hikaru. On her walk home, she patted her full stomach with a look of satisfaction. If I could live there, I'd be able to eat delicious food every day. But she had no reason to move in, nor was she thick-skinned enough to freeload her way in. I'll just drop by for meals every day. She immediately seized upon a compromise. Back at Hikaru's house. Aren't you worried? Konko is a girl. A state said from the sofa, glancing at Hikaru. Even if she's a girl, she's a devil. Nobody's safer than her. Hikaru chuckled. A state nodded and turned her attention back to the anime she was watching. Hikaru, meanwhile, sorted through what he had gained that day. His cheat ability did more than just speed up training. Having spent considerable time with Konko, he'd naturally refined magical power from his cursed energy. And after today's interaction with her, he acquired something new, Immortal Chi. Although Konko was a devil, she also had another identity. She was actually a cat yokai, an extremely rare breed that could wield Immortal Chi and Senjutsu skillfully. Compared to magic, refining Immortal Chi was surprisingly easy for Hikaru. The biggest difference was that, while magic was conjured from nothing or formed via a special process, Chi was an intrinsic energy that resided within animals, plants, and humans, and therefore had no direct destructive power. Because it already existed rather than having to be generated from scratch, it was simpler to tap into. Of course, if any Senjutsu practitioner found out that Hikaru had refined Immortal Chi in just a few days, they'd be shocked beyond belief. Even for naturally gifted yokai, cultivating Chi is no easy feat. It can take years, decades, or even longer, and many fail to produce more than a weak trickle of energy. As for what he'd achieved so far, it was unassuming yet extremely practical. If Hikaru closed his eyes now, he could clearly sense the flow of Chi. Even though many life forms can't harness or cultivate Chi, it still exists in every living being. Devils, angels, humans, even a state each had their own unique Chi signature. Devils' Chi was tinted purple, angels golden, normal human races white, and a state's silver, massively powerful in quantity. In truth, a state deserved at least half the credit for Hikaru's progress. Getting back on track, Chi itself can't be used for direct attacks. But it's akin to the spiritual energy in Xianxia novels. It strengthens one's body from within, so Hikaru's physique improved thanks to Immortal Chi. For now, the growth was slow and not drastic, but he was clearly more agile than before, and his strength had become even more formidable. As the Chi flowed gently through his body, it provided a continuous cool sensation. Its effect far exceeded Hikaru's expectations. Even if he chose to focus solely on cultivating Immortal Chi in the future, he might well reach a level comparable to the Mao, Demon King, class. In the underworld, that was already the highest tier of devil strength. Beyond that lay the so-called transcendent class, transcendent being merely a label, but those power levels typically exceeded the average Mao by a factor of 10. Much like how, in Dragon Ball, Super Saiyan 2 far outstrips Super Saiyan 1. His only regret at the moment was the lack of a matching secret cultivation manual. While he could continue to explore and train on his own, having one would be much more efficient. So, while Estate continued watching anime, Hikaru continued to build up his Immortal Chi. This Chi strengthened his physique, and once his body improved, all his other abilities rose in tandem. And thanks to his Chi ability letting him feel his progress, he was even more motivated. As he cultivated, the once minuscule wisp of Chi gradually expanded. If it had been the size of a soybean initially, after just a few hours it had become a small spring. Meanwhile, The inherent vitality he'd shown before, which even normal people could sense, was starting to subside, making him look, at least on the surface, like an ordinary human once again. Chapter 12, Ghouls, Fallen Angels, Antique Cafe. Several hours passed. After Hikaru finished his usual training and took a bath with Estate, he went to bed and fell asleep. Early the next morning, Hikaru woke to Estate's morning kiss. Getting more and more skilled at this, Estate. He picked her up, smiling slightly. In the beginning, Estate had been totally clueless, like a blank slate. But later, who knows where she'd learned such things. Every morning now, she did this. As long as Hikaru likes it. Though her face showed little emotion, she was genuinely happy inside. Then I'd like it better if you'd take off those stockings. Hikaru teased. Instantly, Estate went from being expressionless to blushing, hugging her knees and arms against her body. Her cheeks turned pink as she muttered in a small voice, "That's so pervy. I can't take off my stockings." Ha ha ha. After that, it was a normal school day. Ryaz didn't seek him out this time, though Konko chatted with him a bit. After school the previous day, she had eagerly started watching the Cyberpunk 2077 spin-off anime he'd given her, getting through half of it. The rest of the story gets even better. "I think you'll like it," Hikaru said with a slight smile. He could only imagine how Konko would react after that final episode, and the thought made him want to laugh, but he held it in. From time to time, Hikaru glanced at Ariri, but she would turn away as if sulking. He could guess with his eyes closed that it was because of what happened at lunch the day before, though he paid it little mind. Knowing Ariri's personality, she'd be back to her usual self in a few days. Another day passed. After he and Estate finished dinner, Hikaru headed out to stock up on groceries for the next few days. Leaving home, he jumped on a motorcycle and sped away. The shopping itself didn't take long, but on his way back, Hikaru sensed something amiss. Changing course, he rode off in another direction. At the same time, rain fell steadily over the city, and out in the suburbs, an extraordinary meeting was taking place inside a cafe. Normally, the antique cafe stayed open until late, but tonight a closed sign hung on its door. Nevertheless, faint light could be seen behind the drawn curtains. Inside, two groups of people faced off in the open space. Tables and chairs lay scattered across the floor, materials strewn about. Tension filled the air. A tall, blond man extended a reptilian kaghan from his back. Next to him stood another figure in a long black cloak, face hidden behind a white mask with a twisted, snarling expression. Two more figures wore blue robes and X-shaped masks. Opposing them were several individuals in cafe uniforms. "I've already said this time it's not a request, but a demand. You must join our organization." Sneering, the blonde man nicknamed Gecko spoke in a harsh tone. "No way in hell. Don't even think about it." Tuka Kirishima glared warily at the group before her. After school, she had came to work as usual. This cafe, named Antique, was actually a gathering place for ghouls who could eat normal human food, those who wanted nothing more than to live peacefully among humans. But their peace had been shattered tonight by these ghouls who still fed on human flesh. Normally, the two sides kept to themselves. No one would have expected this sudden turn of events. The intruders barreled in, demanding they join their organization. "We're nothing like you. Get lost before things get out of hand." Tuka, disgusted at having her peaceful life disrupted, showed them no courtesy. "That won't do. I already said, you don't have the right to negotiate. If you don't want to die, just agree." With those words, Gecko swept his kaghan across the bar, sending cups and utensils clattering to the floor. "Bastard!" Tuka and the other two ghouls ground their teeth in anger. One of them, a stocky man, let out a shout as a kaghan tore through the back of his clothes, launching a fierce attack. Its power seemed on par with Gecko's, if not stronger judging by the shape and color. But right then, two of the black-robed figures behind Gecko flung aside their cloaks and drew something like glowing swords. Seeing this, the stocky man froze for just an instant, and that was all Gecko needed. With a swipe of his kaghan, he sent the man flying. Even so, when Tuka and the others caught sight of the weapons in those figures' hands, their faces registered even greater shock. Those things. Never seen them. This is the power bestowed upon us by the fallen angels. You've actually teamed up with the fallen angels? Tuka Kirishima and her companions were taken aback, far more than before. Chapter 13, Yoshimura, SSS-rated ghoul. Although ghouls typically have little to do with mythology, they do belong to the mystic side of things to some extent. They knew well about the three factions: devils, angels, and fallen angels, and their mutual hostilities. What's more, everyone was aware that Kuat Town was devil territory. Using the fallen angels' power in a devil-controlled city, were these people trying to start a war? If the devils found out, the consequences would be unimaginable. After all, those devils already allowed ghouls to live quietly in their dominion, which was mercy enough. Even if the ghouls occasionally use their powers to bully people or stole a corpse here or there, the devils usually turned a blind eye. But working with fallen angels crossed the line. Tuka Kirishima and her friends only wanted a peaceful life. They didn't want to be dragged into disputes, especially not between two factions of mythical beings. They'd just be cannon fodder in such a conflict. Collaborate. Weak races like us, if we want to live better in the world that's coming, we can only ally with stronger forces. The fallen angels have already promised that once they rule the world, we ghouls will get our own territory where we can corral humans and eat them however we like. The blonde man known as Gecko wore an enraptured expression, clearly longing for such a life. Nowadays, if they wanted to eat humans, they had to either lurk in dark corners waiting for hapless prey or steal corpses. We're ghouls, too. We have our pride. We want to freely devour meat and drink blood, even in broad daylight. Madman. Tuka and her companions couldn't comprehend his thinking at all. Me, a madman? You're the crazy ones, living such a boring life. And by the way, get your manager out here. I know exactly who he is, the strongest SSS-rated ghoul. If he joins us, all the other ghouls in this city will surely follow. They needed manpower for their war. The manager of the antique cafe, Yoshimura, held great influence. You should leave. We don't want any part of this. At that moment, an elderly man emerged from the kitchen area. With eyes narrowed in calm composure, he radiated a powerful presence. Even Gecko paused momentarily on seeing him, though he quickly drew more power from the spear of light bestowed by the fallen angels. Far from being intimidated, Gecko grew excited. According to information from the fallen angels, Yoshimura possessed a special constitution. His kaka could provide genetic material to artificially create more powerful one-eyed ghouls. If they matured, their strength might even rival mid-level devils. As he spoke, Yoshimura revealed his unique kagen. Feathers sprouted, covering half of his body in an instant like a bird's plumage forming armor. Both hands were now blade-like kagen. Truth be told, his kagen power alone was considerable, but the enemy wielded the power of fallen angels, a mythical force. Yoshimura had no guarantee that his feathered kagen could withstand it. A fierce battle broke out at once. With years of combat experience, Yoshimura made a quick move to eliminate Gecko first. In the next second, he burst past the cafe counter, slicing downward at the blonde man's head. Gecko, however, easily blocked the strike with his spear of light. He even managed to tear apart the end of Yoshimura's feathered kagen in the process. At the same time, the ghoul wearing a mouth-shaped mask launched a sneak attack. Yoshimura noticed just in time, slicing him clean in two at the waist, but such an injury was barely a scratch. Upper and lower halves reconnected with rapid regrowth. A spear of light then pierced Yoshimura's side, causing him to spit blood. Manager. Tuka and the others cried out, wanting to help but were blocked by the other two attackers. Just then, the cafe door chimed, as though someone had opened it. Those inside reflexively turned toward the sound. They saw a silhouette in the dark corridor, partially lit by moonlight. As the clouds moved in the wind, the silvery moonlight gradually faded from the figure. The cafe's indoor lights took over, illuminating the man bit by bit. It was as if the darkness retreated with each step he took. The perfect synchronization of timing and setting left everyone momentarily forgetting the battle, the scene etching itself like a brand upon their minds. Who was that? Looks like just an ordinary person. If he's human, so much the better. We can bring him back as food. All this activity has made me a bit hungry. Hikaru. It's you? Under the cafe's light, the newcomer's face came into focus. Tuka Kirishima was stunned. As his classmate, she could never have forgotten a presence that shone like the sun. Tuka, he's your classmate. That's trouble. Protecting him might be impossible. But Hikaru ignored them, walking straight toward the ghouls brandishing their kagen. With a single glance, he understood what was happening. Upon seeing the spear of light, however, his expression flickered in surprise. That's light-based power? You pesky fool. I'll eat you first. One of the robed ghouls flashed forward like a shadow, rushing straight at Hikaru, irritated by the handsome human face. Tuka felt her heart jolt and wanted to intervene, but couldn't react in time. Hikaru merely raised his palm to meet the blade-like kagen slashing down at him. Chapter 14, No Problem. Clang. A metallic ring reverberated. The ghoul's kagen was caught between Hikaru's fingers. All those years of training had not been in vain. With his chi-like advantage, it had only taken him a few months to gain strength on par with a great knight in the Campione world. Afterward, he learned devil magic, and his body's toughness could no longer be compared to what it once was. Attacks from a ghoul felt more like a light scratch to him. He could nullify them through physical strength alone. What's going on? Tuka Kirishima was the most shocked of all. How could an ordinary human possibly block a ghoul's attack? Even reacting in time should have been impossible. As far as she knew, Hikaru was just someone who was extremely skilled in sports. Could this be the legendary sports guy power at work? Meanwhile, Hikaru, who had just stopped the Kagen with his fingers, made a move of his own, grabbing the ghoul's head. Cursed energy burst from within his body and surged into his palm, igniting the ghoul's head in seconds. Flesh and brain were incinerated before it could regenerate. Even a ghoul's formidable healing couldn't bring him back from that. Brother. Seeing what had happened, the other black-robed ghoul who was blocking Tuka and her companions instantly snapped. He kicked off the ground, spun 360 degrees in midair, and swung his Kagen with tremendous momentum in a slash directed at Hikaru. But it was futile. The Kagen sliced only empty air. In what felt like a blink, Hikaru appeared above him. Boom. Hikaru's foot slammed the ghoul's head to the floor, smashing out a large crater. Blood splattered, his skull visibly fractured. Finally realizing something was wrong, the blonde ghoul known as Gecko turned around to glare at Hikaru. You bastard. Who are you? I'm the one who's going to kill you. Hikaru spoke calmly, voice as cold as ice. Judgment has come. Die. The moment he finished, Hikaru disappeared from Gecko's field of vision. His speed had already surpassed what normal eyes could follow, so even the simplest physical attack looked like lightning-fast motion. With cursed energy amplifying his speed, he could move even faster, but there was no need to go that far for small fries like these. In Gecko's eyes, Hikaru vanished, and by the time he realized what had happened, the spear of light originally wielded by Gecko was already piercing through his skull from back to front. Despite all his muscle and training, his body crumpled like cotton candy. The masked ghoul Noro, however, posed a surprise. Even with his skull torn apart, he remained alive. Be careful. Ordinary attacks can't kill him. Someone behind called out. Can't kill him? I doubt that. Hikaru paused, and Noro stayed where he was. His white mask had shattered, revealing a grotesque face. Most of his flesh was covered by Kagen. Even his brain was fused with it. Though Noro's intelligence wasn't high, his primal survival instincts had been pushed to the limit. Yet the oppressive aura emanating from Hikaru made him want to flee immediately. But Hikaru wouldn't give him the chance. Narrowing his eyes, he began to use his Immortal Chi. Everything that lives possesses Chi, and ghouls are no exception, except theirs mainly originates from their cuckoo, which defines a ghoul's very essence. It ends now. Identifying the location of Noro's cuckoo with Immortal Chi, Hikaru became a blur once more, moving too fast to track. Several flashes of light fell in an instant, puncturing every cuckoo inside the ghoul. Noro's entire body was simultaneously smashed to pieces. At the same time, the spear of light in Hikaru's hand vanished, its energy from the fallen angels spent. Hiss. Tuka Kirishima, Yoshimura, and the others stared in disbelief. Such overwhelming strength. Even ghouls bolstered by fallen angel power had been annihilated in mere seconds. Amazing, Tuka. He's really your classmate. Someone with that kind of power. Might he be part of one of those legendary mythic factions? As soon as that was said, everyone still alive tensed up. Ghouls who once believed themselves capable of influencing the world realized that in a setting ruled by mythology, they were small fry indeed. Even facing a single low-level fallen angel was usually beyond them, and here was Hikaru, likely a member of some mysterious power, performing feats that dwarfed theirs. Now, it's your turn. Hikaru slowly turned around, fixing them with a calm gaze. At his words, a wave of goosebumps swept over everyone in the room. Chapter 15, Official Devil Permit. They had witnessed with their own eyes how easily those ghouls empowered by fallen angel power were slaughtered. If they ended up facing him, they wouldn't stand a chance. And they could clearly sense that Hikaru truly harbored a bit of killing intent toward them. Hikaru. How are you here? Tuka Kirishima asked, startled. I caught the stench of something foul. I came to see, and sure enough, I found trash. Hikaru replied. So, among you, has anyone here eaten humans like they did? Hikaru never had much fondness for ghouls. Even though Tuka Kirishima and the others might be considered good guys in the original single fandom story, their behavior wasn't purely innocent. The antique cafe sheltered many ghouls seeking to turn over a new leaf. If Hikaru had never come across them, it might have been fine, but now that he had, he wouldn't show mercy if any of them were guilty. What do we do? Someone began to panic. They had thought he was a savior, but it turned out he might be an executioner instead. Wait. Hikaru, I swear they haven't eaten humans. At most. They've just bought blood from the black market. They've never actually eaten anyone. Tuka said anxiously. How can you prove that? Hikaru shot back. Hikaru-sama, please be merciful. Tuka's telling the truth, we really haven't attacked any humans. I even have a certificate from the devils. Speaking up, Yoshimura handed him a red case document. Hikaru took it, scanning through the contents. His expression stiffened a bit. After a moment of silence, He pulled out the badge Ryaz had given him and initiated contact. Ryaz, do you know there are ghouls within your territory? Why the sudden question? Well, when I inherited Kwa Town from my father, I did look into things. Yes, there are indeed some ghoul communities, but they don't pose any harm to ordinary humans, so I've left them alone. Ryaz answered, rubbing her eyes. So, what happened? Nothing. So that was it. These antique cafe ghouls actually had an official permit from the underworld, which explained how they could operate so openly in Kwa. The misunderstanding was resolved. Tuka's companions, who had been trembling at Hikaru's killing intent, heaved a collective sigh of relief, though they still watched him warily, in case he turned hostile again. But Hikaru no longer displayed any inclination to attack. Anyway, why do these ghouls have fallen angel powers? Hikaru asked. Yoshimura proceeded to explain the entire story in detail. He recognized the emblem engraved on Hikaru's badge, the coat of arms of the pure-blood devil Gremory family. So even if Hikaru wasn't a devil, he was at least connected. Trying to survive between the cracks of society, the cafe's ghouls had no desire to get dragged into this unnecessary conflict. Yoshimura's explanation cleared things up for Hikaru. So these ghouls, typically just fodder in a fantasy world, had teamed up with fallen angels? Interesting. Hikaru saw no reason to linger and turned to leave. As he departed into the dark, rainy night, Tuka Kirishima stood at the cafe entrance watching him go, her expression complicated. Riding his motorcycle back home, Hikaru reflected that the battle had been an unexpected detour, but not a fruitless one. By seizing the spears of light the ghouls wielded, his passive ability activated, granting him some insight into the nature of light power. Light power, as it turned out, was distinct from both magic and immortal chi. It was the inherent power of angels and fallen angels. When God created them, he imbued them with holy force light power. Even when angels fall, their power remains unchanged, only their mindset becomes corrupt. Light power perfectly suppresses devils and other sinister entities. So as soon as Hikaru returned home, he seized this rare opportunity to analyze the light power and see if he could master it. More techniques mean more strength, after all. Still, even with heaven rewards diligence, Hikaru couldn't possibly master sacred force in just a few hours. Furthermore, after assimilating a strand of light power's data, he noticed a minor issue in his body. Devil power and angelic power repelled each other. Like the positive and negative poles of a magnet, these two powers were mutually incompatible. If he tried to forcibly cultivate light power, the conflict between the two incompatible energies might blow up inside him like a lit fuse. But that didn't faze Hikaru. They're incompatible? So what? For an ordinary person, that meant a choice between one or the other. But for him? Deep Blue, let's test your limits. Oh, sorry, wrong script. Heaven rewards diligence, let's train. Chapter 16, Fusion. By applying his insights and intellect, Hikaru forcefully refined the light power he'd acquired, successfully resolving the conflict between magic and holy energy, preventing any backlash that might have caused him to lose control and literally explode. His use of Immortal Chi contributed significantly to this, because in the grand scheme of all things in nature having Chi, it acted as a life source buffer, soothing these two inherently opposing energies. Now Hikaru was able to gather magic in his left hand and holy power in his right. A holy demonic fusion? He suddenly recalled how, in the original story, Yodo-Kiba being a devil initially only wielded demonic sword powers as his sacred gear, but later, through deeper understanding, was able to wield both holy and demonic swords simultaneously. It took him years of accumulation and a sudden breakthrough to achieve it. Hikaru attempted to fuse these two otherwise conflicting energies within himself. Regardless of the universe's rules, fusion typically yields far greater power. Think of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where two mundane normal monsters can fuse into a powerful red eyes. Or how, in Dragon Ball, Goku and Vegeta, no matter which fusion method they use, turn into the immensely strong Gogeta or Vegito. He drew out his demonic energy, which, in the underworld, differs by family lineage in both color and ability. For instance, the Gremory family's specialty is destructive power, generally represented by a deep crimson hue. Most devil magic takes on a dark or vividly striking color. Meanwhile, holy power is essentially light, or the light of God, and thus glows with pure gold. So in Hikaru's hands, faint red magic swirled like threads on one side, while on the other, a golden cluster of light sparkled like tiny fireflies. As he slowly brought them together, boom! They exploded, predictably. Although these two energies could coexist in his body, once removed from it, they reacted the same way as ever. Hikaru wasn't surprised. If combining them had been that simple, someone else would have done it long ago. He wasn't in a hurry. Even with a cheat-like ability, training takes time. Even a disciple of the Wind Spirit Moon Shadow sect has to say ding first. Noticing it was late, Hikaru took a bath and went to bed. The next day. Another typical morning at school. Nobody in class was talking about the incident from last night. Even though this world's setting is bizarre, various mythical factions still keep a firm hold behind the scenes. In this reality, the CCG devs that everyone in the Tokyo Ghoul setting knows about is just another top-secret government unit here, similar to the national security organizations often found in old novels. If anything truly uncontainable occurred, they'd chalk it up to a gas pipeline explosion. Or cast large-scale memory alteration spells to resolve it. Hikaru cast a glance at Tuka Kirishima's seat. As someone special. She achieved good grades in school and wore glasses, sitting in the front row, very much the picture of an attentive, diligent student. Indeed, she worked hard outside of school, she mostly just talked with friends, and she had no trouble consuming cafeteria food. Unlike in the original setting, she didn't vomit whenever she ate human food. Honestly, Hikaru found the Tokyo Ghoul explanation tough to reconcile. Sure, it's said that ghouls must eat people because humans have unique RC cells, but normal foods come in all kinds of flavors and nutritional content. Why would they cause such a strong rejection? Meanwhile, Tuka, chatting and laughing with classmates, noticed Hikaru enter and instantly recalled last night's events. Her face went pale, and she instinctively closed her mouth. Huh? Tuka, what's wrong? You just stopped talking. Are you not feeling well? No, I'm fine. Feeling Hikaru's gaze, Tuka became visibly uneasy. But he soon looked away, giving her a chance to breathe again. Although he had spared them the night before, the psychological damage remained. Tuka. You keep glancing over at Hikaru. Don't tell me you have a crush on him? A classmate asked in surprise. What? No way. Tuka nearly choked at the idea. She could barely manage seeing him without panic, and the thought that he was seated right behind her made her feel on edge, squirming in her chair. No need to explain. Actually, it's perfectly normal to have a crush on him. I do, too. Which means we're rivals in love now. Chapter 17, Sunasaitri the Agiri Tree, a faction under the Fallen Angels umbrella. The ghouls active within it weren't in a cheerful mood. They'd thought that hooking up with the Fallen Angels would raise the status of ghouls, but on their very first mission, something went wrong. The team sent out last night still hadn't returned. A scout dispatched this morning discovered that the cafe in question was operating as usual. What's going on? Even if their manager got involved, they shouldn't have lost. The spear of light is far sharper than a cannon. A white-haired man wearing a mask that covered the lower half of his face stutter voiced his doubts. Could they have run into those devils? It's not impossible, but if that's the case, things are going to be troublesome. Recruiting new members was supposed to be a secret initiative, preparing for the war that could break out soon. If their plan were exposed, the fallen angels who already looked down on them would be the first to dispose of them. But let's not be too pessimistic. Tagore lowered his voice. If the devils really were involved, they would have found us by now. The devil's tracking spells are even more of a headache than we imagined. For now, we'll just abandon this space and wait for the fallen angels' next instructions. Lunchtime. Rya's Creamery inviting Hikaru in person caused quite a stir. Seeing him accept the invitation and leave with her left numerous onlookers feeling heartbroken, both men and women alike. Eerie, watching Hikaru walk off with the school idol without so much as a word to her, gripped her mechanical pencil so tightly her knuckles turned white. Why? She'd known him longer, whether as a classmate, a friend, or going out together. She'd come first in everything. So why did it turn out this way? Meanwhile, Hikaru had no idea that this near-childhood friend was currently caught up in her own personal White Album-style heartbreak. Occult Research Club. Ryaz had personally came to invite Hikaru. He could guess her motive, which was likely related to last night's incident. I've already asked my familiar to investigate the cafe. However, I'd like to hear your side of the story. Ryaz's face was grave. Have some tea, Hikaru. Akano brought over a freshly brewed cup of tea. Thanks. Hikaru accepted it. If you insist on hearing my perspective, I can only say I don't know much. After all, you probably know more about those people's backgrounds than I do. True. But in that case, let me be direct. We've confirmed signs of fallen angel activities in this city, and if they're lying with ghouls, I suspect something bad is brewing. Raya sighed. Hikaru immediately understood. In the original story, Rainer and her group of fallen angels targeted Saihyautu, who possessed a sacred gear, and lured him out under the pretext of dating, then killed him. After that, they took Asia Argento, who also had a sacred gear called Twilight Healing, to a church, intending to steal her gear in a ritual. But in all honesty, Hikaru couldn't fathom why Rainer's group would be so mindless. If all they needed was a hideout for the ritual, they could have chosen any random spot. Instead, they went and did it right under Ryaz's nose. Even if they looked down on devils, Ryaz was still a pure blood, High-class devil, a colossal difference in rank compared to mere low-level fallen angels. One could say that the world needs a few reckless antagonists to keep the plot moving. So? Of course, Hikaru wouldn't reveal the fallen angel's intentions. He wasn't exactly playing the role of an all-knowing oracle. If something happens, I hope you'll help. Ryaz made her request earnestly. We've already agreed on that. There's no need to bring it up again. But this is different from a normal request. The fallen angels are our enemies, and this touches on tensions between two entire races. Right now, you're the only one I can't turn to. Ryaz's sincerity surprised Hikaru. He hadn't expected her to be so formal about what, in his mind, was a relatively minor situation. Sure. Hearing Hikaru agree, Ryaz smiled. I'll compensate you for your help separately. Right then, footsteps approached outside the Occult Research Club room, followed by a knock. Konko opened the door and found a group of Kwa Academy students standing in the corridor. When Ryaz saw the person at the front of that group, she frowned slightly. Why is she here? President Sunasaitri? What brings you to the Occult Research Club? Akano greeted with narrowed eyes and a polite smile. Sunasaitri, the student council president at Kwa Academy. Like Ryaz, she was also a pure-blood devil from the underworld, specifically from the House of Saitri. She had an older sister who inherited the title of Leviathan, one of the current 4 great Ma'au ruling the underworld. Moreover, Suna had a rival-like relationship with Ryaz. Competition was fierce in the underworld, after all. Usually the two were at odds, but in truth, they got along reasonably well. Hikaru turned to look, meeting eyes with Sunasaitri in the hallway. Chapter 18, Story starts. Kano, I'm not here to see Ryaz today. Sunasaitri flashed a faint smile, her gaze fixed on Hikaru. She was dressed in the Kwa Academy uniform, her medium-length black hair falling like a silken fringe. Her eyes were reddish-purple, and her figure was more slender than Ryaz's or Akano's. Because she wore glasses, she exuded an air of intellectual refinement. Not here for the president, then. Could it be? Akano already had a guess. Sure enough, everyone watched as Suna gave Hikaru a slight nod. Hikaru, I am here to see you. Hearing that, Ryaz's brows furrowed. Why do you need Hikaru? I only have a request for him. Suna replied with a soft laugh, briefly casting Ryaz a calm look. You're not planning to recruit Hikaru as your servant, are you? Ryaz asked, her tone slightly hostile. No, I won't do that. Someone like him, with his pride and strength, would find becoming a servant to be beneath him. Ignoring Ryaz's sudden tense expression, Suna produced an obsidian badge engraved with the Saitri family crest. Hikaru, I'd like to form a contract with you. With Suna's explanation, everyone realized her reason for coming. It was, in essence, the same as Ryaz's, because there had been frequent supernatural disturbances in her section of the city, and her own forces were stretched thin. She wanted Hikaru's help. Suna, I got here first. Hikaru and I already have a contract arrangement. Ryaz raised an eyebrow. Good grief, though she and Suna typically got along decently, this felt rather provocative. Soliciting him right in front of her? It's only a contract. Whoever said that once Hikaru is under contract with you, he can't accept jobs from anyone else? Ultimately, it should be his choice. Suna lightly adjusted her glasses. Hikaru, you don't have to take every request. If it suits you, you can do it. Once you complete a request, I'll pay you immediately. Sure. Hikaru nodded. He figured he could use these jobs to hone his skills as well. Actual combat provided faster growth than training behind closed doors. Seeing his acceptance, Ryaz couldn't help feeling a pang of disappointment, like her boyfriend was being poached away. After parting ways with Ryaz and Suna, Hikaru returned to his afternoon classes. Once school ended, the students dispersed in groups of 2s and 3s, some heading to club activities, others going home on their own. Hikaru, leaning against a second-to-last seat by the window, noticed a scene at the school gate that caught his attention. Sai Hyuga, the original protagonist, stood there looking awkward and at a loss, while in front of him was a beautiful, long-haired girl in black. Sai's face was flushed, one hand scratching the back of his head, clearly not knowing what to do. Hikaru couldn't help but smile faintly. Even in this bizarre, mixed world, some developments were destined to happen. Fallen Angel Rainer had likely set her sights on the sacred gear hidden within Sai. Not knowing its rank yet, she'd naturally approach Sai to glean more information before making a move. Still, Hikaru had no intention of intervening immediately, just keeping an eye out. Raina wasn't the sharpest blade in the drawer, figuring out the nature of Sai's gear would take her some time. Of course, Hikaru knew perfectly well what Sai's gear was. In this world, sacred gears created by the biblical god are akin to special abilities that come in countless varieties. Throughout history, many notable figures wielded such gears and cemented their legacies. Most sacred gears only affect human society, but a few can threaten even mythic factions or even kill gods. Those are the Longinus gears. Even among Longinus, some are stronger than others. The sacred gear residing inside Hyuga is the high-tier Longinus known as the boosted gear, the Gauntlet of the Red Dragon Emperor. Its abilities center on doubling power and penetrating defenses, simple yet extremely effective. If he meddled, Hikaru might be able to get his hands on the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear to play around with. Plus, he still had his world-crossing gate. On the other side of that gate was Campione. Even though Hikaru currently possessed near top-tier Great Knight-level power, that would be trifling to a Campione. But if he got the Red Dragon Emperor's power, his path might grow a lot smoother. With that thought, Hikaru took a moment to check the energy level of his world-crossing gate, 10.1%. Still a long way from being fully charged. Chapter 19, The Possibility of Killing a God. To fill up the world-crossing gate's energy, aside from letting it gradually build day by day, it also depends on Hikaru's own strength. The stronger he is, the faster the energy recovers. In addition, fighting certain enemies can also replenish energy, and there may be other methods too. However, since Hikaru wasn't in a hurry to return to the Campione world, he hadn't paid it much mind. He hadn't rushed back to Campione before because it was too dangerous there. The power of gods layers, Campione, and rogue gods, heretic gods, in that world is essentially top tier. While Hikaru's Great Knight rank was among the best in the human realm, to gods and gods layers, anyone below their level was merely an ant. Encountering a grumpy heretic god or Campione could mean instant death, no questions asked. Of course, Hikaru had considered killing a god, but he was well aware of the gap between himself and a heretic god. Besides direct combat, there might be other ways. For instance, maybe one random morning run he'd accidentally kick a dozing heretic god in the corner and kill it by pure luck, thus beginning his grand transformation. Such coincidences weren't unheard of. Almost every first-time God's Lair kills their god by some stroke of luck or chance. The odds of winning a head-on fight with a heretic god as a mere mortal are zero. So after training to a certain level, Hikaru left that world. Being dragged into a heretic god's domain is basically a death sentence. Here in this world, though it's chaotic, it still has a semblance of order, and even a messy order is still some kind of order. However, these days Hikaru found himself once again thinking about the Campione world. With his current skills, plus the possibility of obtaining a Longinus, like the Red Dragon Emperor's boosted gear, there might be a chance for a direct god killing. If he actually became a Campione, his life would become far smoother. Even in this supernatural anime fusion world, he'd be at the very pinnacle. Leaving the occult research club, Hikaru considered what to do next. There was the option of intervening in major plot lines, taking on commissions, training daily, and teasing Estate whenever he was bored. Life was undeniably fulfilling. Back in the classroom, though, Ariri was obviously unhappy with him. After all, he'd been hanging around the school beauties too often recently, and Ariri couldn't help but speculate about their relationship. Could it be that Hikaru got caught by them somehow, and now he has to obey those big-breasted women's every command? Every time he gets called over, they're doing this or that to him? Being a doujin artist, Ariri's mind instantly leaped to a classic bullied at school scenario. Except that, in reality, it was flipped in the other direction. No, that can't be right. Hikaru's so skilled, how could he be bullied? She shook her head, her golden ponytail swishing like a pendulum. The more she thought, the more her imagination soared. If it weren't for the fact they were in class, she'd probably start drawing the scenes playing out in her mind. I'll just ask Mom. Maybe she can help me figure out how to reclaim Hikaru's attention. The afternoon classes passed quickly. After their homeroom teacher, Mifagirasu, went over the recently graded tests with a frosty expression, everyone's mood dropped. But by dismissal time, it had bounced back. Hikaru followed his usual routine and went home. After cooking dinner, he and Estate sat down to eat. She ate like a kitten, prompting him to affectionately pat her head before standing up. I'm heading out back to train. You can watch TV once you're done eating. Okay, Hikaru. She didn't even look up, preoccupied with her food. She called him by name because that was her personality. She felt closer that way. If the day ever came that she called him master, it would mean Estate was upset. Hikaru made his way to the villa's backyard to focus on practicing senjutsu. In this world, immortal chi, or life energy, forms the foundation of senjutsu. Unlike magic or light power, it has no direct destructive capability, but it has many other uses. Although he lacked a systematic training manual, he hoped he could figure out some basic senjutsu on his own. Under the moonlight, a thin layer of white life flame began to glow around Hikaru. It looked gentle yet somewhat divine. After about an hour, he finally glimpsed a path forward. Using this life flame as a basis, he mastered a few rudimentary senjutsu techniques. Besides sharpening his senses, he now had ways to weaken or even dispel curses, remove negative status effects, and perform basic healing spells. Not bad. He opened his eyes, a satisfied smile on his face. With heaven rewards diligence, everything was more efficient. Just then, a burning sensation emanated from the pocket of his shirt. Hikaru pulled out the glowing badge, specifically the one Sunasai had given him that very morning. It was vibrating. Chapter 20, Yaoi Hazuki. Although Sunasai and Ryaz Creamery each serve as a lord, territory manager, in the underworld's hierarchy, they must also shoulder certain responsibilities, for instance, protecting residents under supernatural threats or fulfilling other types of requests. By completing such requests, they not only help the people who ask, but also earn credit toward their record as lords. At the same time, interactions between devils and humans can help maintain ties between the two races. However, as far as Hikaru knew, both Ryaz and Sona, being high-ranked devils, mostly handled battle-related requests. Other types of wishes usually fell under specialized departments in the underworld. Let's see what's going on. He channeled a bit of magic into the emblem. A holographic projection of a young girl appeared before his eyes. It's an emergency, please help. She glanced around nervously, as though evading something, and then the projection ended. Silence returned to the room. Hikaru mulled over the girl's face, which seemed strangely familiar. Regardless, he decided to accept the request. A state. He called out. At once, the girl materialized in a flicker of silver light. Time to get to work, Hikaru said. With that, the obsidian badge from the House of Saitree glowed with a pale blue radiance. A magic circle bearing the Saitree crest spread beneath Hikaru's feet. He felt a sense of weightlessness and detachment as space distorted, linking his location to another. His figure gradually faded out. Late night. The moon hung in a starry sky, but its soft glow barely penetrated the thick forest. Only a few stray beams cast thread-like patterns on the ground below. Yaoi Hazuki found herself alone in a silent wilderness. Cold wind hissed like a specter, and a creeping chill pervaded the air, sending shivers down her spine. My magic is completely drained. She looked at the now dim flyer in her hand. It bore the Saitree crest, which she had used to attempt contacting a devil. She'd only managed to say one sentence before it lost all power. She couldn't help wondering if the flyers handed out in the streets were just a scam. Yet, moments earlier, she really had sensed an unusual surge of energy. When it rains, it pours. Muttering to herself, she carefully glanced behind her only to lock eyes with a rotting ghost infant. A ghost infant, also known as a yokai baby or infant spirit, is essentially the soul of a deceased infant. Whether from abortion, miscarriage, or a premature death, these children's spirits become vengeful if they die before or shortly after birth. Though any single one of them is fairly weak, they're massive in number. Even within a single city, there could easily be tens of thousands over many years. Here, countless infant spirits had gathered because of the Gishamojin. Gishamojin, in mythology, is one of Buddhism's 20 devas, a guardian who once was a demon that devoured babies. However, after Buddha Shakyamuni guided her to understand the pain of losing her own child, she repented and became a protector of children. Yet, as the local temple fell into disuse and lost its devotees, Gishamojin could no longer purify or guide every infant spirit to salvation. Over time, the buildup of so many child ghosts led her to be corrupted, becoming an evil god. Yaoi Hazuki had come here seeking Gishamojin's powers to lift a curse from her older sister, Aiko Hazuki. But she had underestimated both Gishamojin and the sheer number of infant spirits. Unprepared, she now found herself in a desperate struggle, fleeing for her life. Additionally, her substitution doll had been destroyed. If she were to be attacked again, she'd have no way out. In her panic, she'd recalled the flyer she got earlier that day. Her last hope was to summon a devil to fix this mess. Using devils against evil spirits sounded like a decent plan. Unfortunately, the magic circle on the flyer only lasted a few seconds. She barely had time to say one sentence before it died out. She didn't even get to share her location. With that, she lost her final fallback. Now, she could only fight, retreat, and think of something else. Her plan was to reach the temple's main hall. If she couldn't haul away Gishamojin's entire statue, she'd at least try to break off an arm or finger. That would still be something. Having knocked away the ghost infant confronting her with her physics holy sword, Yaoi Hazuki swiftly moved on. She shook off a few more infant spirits along the way and managed to slip into the main hall. But she felt no relief. Those ghost babies had already caught wind of her whereabouts, and it wouldn't be long before they closed in. Once they trapped her, it was over. While Gishamojin, even corrupted, might still refrain from harming children, those infant spirits felt no such compassion. Though childlike and innocent, they could also be the cruelest of beings, caring only to play with their victim until she joined their ranks. Outside, the rustling grew louder and louder. Peering out, Yaoi Hazuki realized the doorway was swarming with writhing black infant spirits. Even an experienced adult would feel goosebumps at the sight. Yet at that moment, a pale blue magic circle appeared before Yaoi Hazuki. A figure emerged from it, none other than Hikaru. Chapter 21, Gishamojin. Under these circumstances, Yaoi Hazuki reflexively swung her physics holy sword. But the newcomer raised his hand and caught the weapon. Hikaru sized up the little girl in front of him, smiling faintly. If you attack the one you commissioned, your request becomes void. Once she realized who it was, Yaoi Hazuki understood she'd attacked the wrong person. She immediately withdrew her crowbar-like weapon and apologized. Sorry, I was too anxious. Forget it. What's your name? Hikaru glanced around at the surroundings and at the statue. It appeared to be a temple. The small girl before him had dark purple hair, wore a deep purple jacket and shoes with skull patterns and edgy, westernized gothic look. But the most striking feature was her eyes. Each iris was split in two, a double pupil. Given the eerie setting, anyone might suspect she was in the middle of some bizarre ritual. I'm Yaoi Hazuki. I'm the one who placed the request. Are you a devil? She regarded Hikaru with curiosity, seeing none of the typical devil traits, no tail, no wings. No, I'm not a devil. We just work together, he replied. No wonder she had looked so familiar in that brief projection. Turns out this little girl was the protagonist from Dark Gathering. In that series, she wandered a world full of malevolent spirits, capturing them somewhat like an alternate form of Pokemon. Her appearance in this fused universe didn't surprise him. After all, if ghouls and cursed spirits could be stitched in, malevolent ghosts could also join the mix. Besides, it fit quite neatly with the lore. Since the biblical god was dead, the system that managed human souls had broken down, leaving them no place to go. They either vanished or turned into evil spirits. Work together? Yaoi Hazuki blinked in surprise. So even these top-secret devil request jobs can be outsourced? Before she could continue, the rustling noises outside intensified. A frigid gust howled, like the wailing of hundreds of souls. The girl's face grew tense. Gishamojin and her infant spirits have found us. Doesn't matter, Hikaru said calmly. Moments later, a black, Buddha-like spectral figure appeared in a fierce wind through the open temple doors. Inside, furnishings rattled and clattered under the blast, and a horde of black infant spirits crawled toward the two of them from every angle, drawn by the delicious scent of living humans. Gishamojin's gaze locked onto Hikaru. The infant spirits focused on Yaoi Hazuki. What can you do? She asked, hoping they could break through the encirclement. If we can just get to the car where Aiko is waiting at the foot of the mountain, we can escape this place. No need, Hikaru said. A black wind whipped around him. It wasn't ordinary wind, but a miasma steeped in grudges enough to suffocate a normal person and muddle their mind if they stayed too long. This'll be over soon. In Yaoi Hazuki's eyes, Hikaru strode straight forward. The infant spirits reached out to grab him, but before they could touch him, a burst of golden light scattered them. Hikaru raised an eyebrow in mild surprise. He'd only been testing it, but the effect of his light power was unexpectedly good. Lucky for them they weren't annihilated earlier like the curses or devils I've fought. The Black Buddha or Gishamojin howled in fury at seeing her baby's spirits destroyed. Despite having fallen into corruption, she retained a sliver of her old instinct not to harm children. Yet watching Hikaru wipe out hundreds of infant spirits with a casual gesture made her shriek in anger and lunge at him, dragging dozens of inky tendrils behind her. No sooner had she leapt than a spear of light formed in Hikaru's hand. He launched it like a lance, and it streaked toward Gishamojin. Her black tail struggled to deflect it, but only held for a second or two before being run through. The spear then continued onward to pierce her heart, forcibly knocking her backward. Its tip drove 3 feet into the ground, pinning Gishamojin in place. During its flight, the spear of light carved a vacuum through the air, ripping countless infant spirits to shreds in the resulting shockwave. Instantly, the area became much clearer. The roiling haze overhead was torn apart, revealing the moon's gentle glow beyond. The remaining infant spirits, though lacking intelligence, were driven by instinct to scatter in all directions after witnessing Hikaru's raw power. Yet Hikaru gave them no chance to escape. Pinned to the ground, Gishamojin's spear of light flared brilliantly like a giant spotlight until it detonated with a roar. The unleashed holy force swept outward like a tidal wave, shredding countless more infant spirits in an instant. When the explosion subsided, Yaoi Hazuki stared at herself in shock. She wasn't hurt at all. She'd assumed she'd be blown to smithereens by that blast. In fact, not even a single blade of grass around her was damaged. As the smoke cleared, Hikaru frowned slightly. She's still alive? Not bad. Chapter 22, Fulfilling Her Mission. Gishamojin wasn't dead yet, But she was close. The spear of light had detonated inside her body at point-blank range. Even a being far more powerful than a graduate-level foe wouldn't have been able to endure. Light power is poisonous to devils and similarly lethal to evil spirits. The only reason she was still alive was that Hikaru's light power wasn't yet fully pure and Gishamojin's corrupted form boasted extraordinary resilience. Any last words? Hikaru asked. But the corrupted Gishamojin had long since lost her rational mind, making no response. Not that he really expected one. Just as Hikaru was about to finish her off, two voices cried out at the same time, "Wait!" A newly formed spear of light halted barely a centimeter above Gishamojin's forehead. Its radiant energy scorched her skin, filling the air with the stench of burning flesh. Hikaru turned around, and so did Yaoi Hazuki. She realized she'd been the one to shout a warning, but who was the other speaker? They saw two silhouettes descending gently from the sky, bathed in moonlight. Though the area was dim, it was still possible to make out the girls' graceful outlines and, behind them, a pair of wings. Yaoi Hazuki instinctively gripped her crowbar tighter. Hikaru, however, guessed who the arrivals were based on their aura and appearance. They were clearly devils. Besides, this was Saitri family territory, so their identity was obvious. Sure enough, it was Suna Saitri gradually emerging from the shadows. With her was another black-haired girl wearing glasses, her face impassive, Tsubaki Shinra, Sona's queen and servant. Four shapely legs gleamed faintly in the moonlight. As they approached, the devilish traits on their backs vanished. Yaoi Hazuki stayed on guard, but Hikaru reached out and pressed down her crowbar. "They're on our side." Then, turning to them, Hikaru asked, "Why are you here?" "I was about to finish the request. Due to certain reasons, once I learned this request was accepted by you, I decided to look into it. I arrived just in time." "You haven't killed her yet." In Japanese, the pronoun she used Kanojo versus care or caught Hikaru's attention. Thanks to his training in curse techniques, he had long since mastered numerous languages, so he picked up on the nuance immediately. "It's just another evil spirit." "What's so special about it?" Hikaru asked. "You may not know, Hikaru, but this particular evil spirit was originally Gishamojin, once a protective goddess of infants, now corrupted for certain reasons." Suna started to explain. Hikaru internally noted, "Of course I know," but remained silent to let her continue. "After Gishamojin fell into darkness, the underworld sealed this place off, erecting a barrier to keep ordinary people away. Later, when I inherited the city from my family, I was asked to find a way to deal with her corruption. But as you know, most devil magic in the underworld focuses on destruction. Even the healing types are only mastered by a few top-tier devils. Methods for breaking curses or sealing monsters are even rarer. In earlier times, you might have found some pure-blood devil families to help. But after the Great War among the three factions and an internal devil civil war, fewer than half of the original 72 pillars remain. Many secret arts and bloodlines have been lost, so the matter has languished until now. I intended to settle it myself once I found a way, so that Gishamojin could fulfill her original role again. But who would have guessed? Some rash little trespasser would break through the barrier." Suna glanced at Yaoi Hazuki in exasperation. At last, Yaoi Hazuki realized she had caused trouble. She quietly stowed her crowbar in her bag, feigning innocence. "No wonder Gishamojin is so famous, yet no one comes here. People either didn't know about it at all or, if they did, refused to come. Anyway, I'm not blaming you for it. Failing to safeguard the site is partly our fault too." Sona sighed. "I see. So it's all about using waste products effectively." Hikaru dispersed the spear of light in his hand. From the original works, he knew that devils in the underworld really struggle with curses and seals. Seeing him put away the spear, both Suna and Tsubaki finally relaxed, but a moment later realized they were staring, eyes widened at Hikaru. Originally, they'd assumed the weapon was some form of exorcist's holy sword, akin to something from Star Wars, requiring recharges. Now they sensed it was something else entirely. "Hikaru, just now. Was that light power?" "Yes. Is there an issue?" "I mean, you're human. How can you wield holy light?" "That's only something angels and fallen angels can do. I gained it through my own training. Though I'm still not very adept." "What kind of nonsense is that? Saying you can use devil magic was already pushing it, but now you claim you can just train yourself into light power out of thin air?" Chapter 23, Senjutsu. Suna Saitri and Tsubaki Shinra were indeed baffled, yet greatly astonished. Hikaru didn't bother hiding anything. For them to be so shocked by a human cultivating holy light was already something, but if they found out that even a devil like Yodokiba could train and wield a holy sword, that would be even more extreme. Nonetheless, Suna was a high-class devil who had seen her fair share of unusual things. After making a mental note to ask her older sister about this when she returned, she turned her attention back to Gishamojin. That aside, what brought you to a place like this? I wanted to lift a curse from my sister. Yaoi Hazuki was unnervingly calm, especially for a child her age. Even in a situation like this, her speech was measured and logical, a composure many adults lacked. After all, most normal people who first learn of the existence of devils end up acting like the sky just fell in. A curse? Sona silently dropped the question she had in mind. Why not just ask a devil for help? Because while devils are good at placing curses, lifting them was something else entirely. Are you here alone? Yes, my sister Aiko is just a normal person. The little goth girl said, casually hefting the crowbar in her backpack. Her statement left Sona and Tsubaki at a loss for words. They could tell Yaoi Hazuki possessed some abilities. In addition to sacred gear wielders, humans in this world could also be exorcists, jujutsu sorcerers, mages, psychics, any manner of special power holders. After some probing, Sona discovered this little one was actually a self-taught sorcerer. Her bravery and innate gift immediately stirred Sona's desire to recruit her. As for purifying her corruption, I might be able to manage it. While they talked, Hikaru crouched down to examine Gishamojin. The deity, who was already half dead from being skewered, could barely move. When she saw him so close, only raw fear remained in her eyes. Hearing Hikaru's remark, Sona turned to him in surprise. You have a way to remove Gishamojin's corruption? She and Tsubaki both wore skeptical expressions. After all, Gishamojin was a decades-old fiasco in the underworld, and even after Sona inherited this territory, she could do nothing but maintain a barrier to keep people out. If even the underworld couldn't solve it, how could he? We can give it a try. But if I succeed, I'll expect some extra compensation. He spoke matter-of-factly. He was happy to help, but not for free. Currently, his relationship with Sona was purely cooperative. They didn't share the same closeness he had with Ryaz. Agreed. Sona nodded right away. They couldn't just kill Gishamojin, because all those stillborn infant spirits would have nowhere to go, potentially spawning even worse evil spirits. If she could be cured and return to her role, the souls of those short-lived infants would find peace. Hikaru gave a slight nod and then summoned his life flame, performing a technique meant to cleanse curses. From his perspective, the infant vengeance corrupting Gishamojin wasn't much different from a curse or a case of going berserk. He gathered his life energy and extended the senjutsu across Gishamojin's entire body, causing her to convulse as though being electrocuted. Sona instinctively wanted to stop him, but remembering her trust in Hikaru, she held back. They all watched as Gishamojin's trembling slowly subsided, and the inky black miasma around her dissipated. It's actually working? Sona's face lit with disbelief. A short time later, the last trace of miasma peeled away, and Hikaru stood up with a faint sheen of sweat on his forehead. He wasn't yet fully adept at senjutsu, and he'd had to invent his own curse removal process. A stronger curse likely would have stumped him at this stage. You really did it. Tsubaki's normally cool face bristled with shock not only at the outcome, but at the power Hikaru had displayed. That technique just now was that senjutsu? Coming from a sorcery clan, Tsubaki was very attuned to Eastern-style powers like jujutsu and senjutsu. Seeing Hikaru finish his work, she finally asked him. Yes. Hikaru replied, making no effort to hide it. Humans could learn senjutsu, too, though it was much harder for them than for a yokai or a deity. Sona and Tsubaki found it utterly astonishing. It was already impressive for an ordinary person to master one ability. But so far, Hikaru had displayed devil magic, holy light, and now senjutsu. One individual, simultaneously commanding 3 different power systems. Just where had this prodigy come from? Compared to him, it felt as though only Seira or Bale among the underworld's younger generation could stand shoulder to shoulder. Sona's eyes gleamed. If she could rally him to her side, it would be an incredible boon. Indeed, with that in mind, she became even more determined to deepen their bond going forward. Chapter 24, Banner. After a short while, Gishamojin slowly regained consciousness. Her body emitted a faint Buddhist radiance. Then, to Hikaru's surprise, Gishamojin's form changed from a chubby Buddha statue into that of a slender, graceful young woman. The tattered monk's robe she had been wearing transformed into vibrant silk attire. Her long, glossy black hair was styled in a traditional updo, her lightly pink lips parted slightly, and her snow-white skin radiated a touch of noble elegance. Under the wide silk sleeves, 2 conspicuous bulges gave her an air of both refinement and softness. She can transform like that? Hikaru was inwardly astonished. The 3 girls beside him were just as surprised to see what had been a pot-bellied Buddha now become a woman. Going from a male form to a female form in an instant was hard to accept. Upon awakening, Gishamojin opened her eyes and slowly rose to her feet. Her gaze lingered briefly on Sona Saitri, then finally settled on Hikaru. I thank you, benefactor, for helping me break free from the corruption of resentful souls. It's a pity those poor infants couldn't achieve their rightful reincarnation. A tinge of sorrow crossed the woman's features. As a protector of children, Aizen, she'd occasionally regained clarity over these past decades, though only for fleeting moments enough to feel how the infant spirit's hatred grew over time. She stared at Hikaru, and he realized that if he didn't speak up, she might just keep silently gazing at him forever. "It's not your fault. You're just a minor deity," Hikaru said. "In fact, there isn't only one Gishamojin. This role is more like an office or station. Any being meeting certain conditions can hold it, much like a tutelary spirit of the land or mountains. The Gishamojin of the Sai Tree domain simply didn't have enough divine power to ward off all those vengeful infant souls. Even so, I failed in my duties. Benefactor, you're more suited to this role than I. If you would accept." Hikaru knew exactly where she was going, so he cut her off. "I'll leave that position to you. Instead of trying to foist it on me, why don't you think of how to repay me? If there's nothing else, I'll be on my way." He was far too busy to take on a deific job like that. Hearing him, Gishamojin sighed softly. "So be it, I won't insist." She reached into her sleeve and produced a small flag. "I have little divine power and no real treasures to speak of, only this small banner that I can offer you." Hikaru took the flag, turning it over in his hands. It resembled an ancient Eastern array banner, covered in black markings that leaked wisps of black mist. This flag was once lodged within an infant spirit. After I guided that spirit on, the banner remained behind. Rinhuang Fan, human emperor banner? No. Has my benefactor ever seen a human emperor banner that exudes black gas? Actually, yes, some of us in the international server refined that type. Gishamojin wasn't sure what international server referred to. Sona Saitri and Tsubaki Shinra, on the other hand, grasped the joke and couldn't help snickering softly. "In any case, benefactor, I don't really know what powers this banner possesses. But I suspect you'll make far better use of it than I." Having spoken, Gishamojin's figure wavered as though becoming less substantial. "My divine power is weak and my foundation unstable. I need to rest. Benefactor, is there anything else you require? Got any more treasures?" Hikaru asked. "No. Then I'll be going." "Hold on." Sona interjected. "Lady Aizen, I am Sona Saitri, heir to the Saitri household of the underworld. I'm the ruler of this city. If you ever need anything in the future, feel free to contact me. So you're the successor of the Saitri house. If you want to help, then please do a better job overseeing affairs in the human world. Compared to 100 years ago, even more infant souls have nowhere to go now." Gishamojin heaved a slight sigh. "I'll do what I can." Sona replied. "Wait, Gishamojin." All at once, Yaoi Hazuki, who had been quiet, spoke up. Gishamojin tilted her head slightly, spotting the little girl and giving a kind smile. "I'm really sorry about before." "It's fine. But, child, why did you call me?" "I wanted to ask if you could lift the curse on my sister's arm." Yaoi Hazuki blurted out. Gishamojin shook her head. "Were it in the past, perhaps I could have helped. But now, I need at least several years to recover. If you can wait, come again in 5 years." "That's too long. 5 years is out of the question." The young girl's face hardened. "Then perhaps rely on our benefactor. He may have a way." After saying this, Gishamojin dissolved into a wisp of green smoke and disappeared into her statue. Chapter 25, Curse. Hikaru felt rather put on the spot. Gishamojin just went and dropped this problem on him. Sure enough, as soon as Gishamojin vanished, Yaoi Hazuki turned toward Hikaru, her gaze filled with hopeful expectation. "Big brother, can you help me?" She would have looked even cuter if she showed a bit more emotion on her face. "I can, but not for free." Hikaru already knew what kind of curse afflicted Aiko Hazuki. However difficult it might be, it shouldn't be more troublesome than cleansing Gishamojin's grudge had been. Upon hearing this, Yaoi Hazuki nodded. "Understood. If you succeed, I can have Sister Aiko give you some benefits. And if that's not enough, and you're into lawless, then I can do it." That casual offer coming from a little girl left Sona Saitri and Tsubaki Shinra taken aback. They had assumed she was just small in stature with big courage, but they hadn't expected her to be that brazen. Yet Hikaru knew she was serious. And indeed, Yaoi Hazuki was quite earnest. She might have been half joking, but Aiko was her only family, and she didn't want her big sister to die from some malignant curse, especially a curse that had been brought on by her own actions. "Let me see the curse first, then we'll figure out a fee," Hikaru said. After that, they followed Yaoi Hazuki down the mountain. Before reaching the base, they spotted a young woman sitting in a car, anxiously waiting. Through the driver's side window, she spotted the figures on the slope and her worried expression turned to delighted surprise. She immediately unfastened her seatbelt, pushed open the car door, and ran over in a rush. Yaoi, are you alright? You're not hurt, are you? And who are these people? Did it work out? Which one is Gishamojin? Compared to Suna and the others, this girl looked more mature, likely a college student, judging by her age and the fact she was driving. She was fair-skinned, beautiful, with a great figure, a trendy style, wearing accessories, her hair in wavy curls. She looked like a cover model for a fashion magazine. Miss Aiko Hazuki, I'm Suna Saitri, the devil who manages Hueco City. You must have received a flyer from my familiars, said the glasses-wearing young aristocrat in a formal tone. Despite her youth, her demeanor far outclassed Aiko Hazuki's. Huh? A D-devil? You're real? I thought it was just some scan marketing stunt. Aiko's eyes went wide. She covered her mouth in shock. Then a quick nod from Yaoi reassured her that what Suna said was true. After all, Aiko had heard of various urban legends at school, including ones about devils who could grant wishes. But most people treated them like the seven wonders of the campus, just fanciful rumors. I see. But looking at you all, you must have dealt with evil spirits before, right? Why believe in evil spirits yet not devils? Suna asked in exasperation. Perhaps because devils were mythological. People found it easier to accept evil spirits than devils. It was just a subconscious assumption, I guess. Anyway, Yaoi, what about Gishamojin? We defeated her, but right now she can't remove your curse. She'll need 5 years to recover her strength. Hearing this, Aiko Hazuki's face sank. Anyone stuck with an unsightly curse on her arm would be miserable. Still, she forced a smile. At least there was a solution, right? Even if it meant waiting 5 years. By the time, she'd have long since graduated from college. But it's okay. I found someone else who's even more reliable than Gishamojin. With that, Yaoi Hazuki introduced Hikaru to Aiko, giving a quick summary of how he'd saved her. Hikaru, thank you. Aiko didn't catch most of the details, but upon hearing that he had rescued her little sister, her goodwill toward him skyrocketed. It was only then she realized how strikingly good-looking the boy before her was. His looks and aura hit her sweet spot perfectly. Coupled with the hero angle, her heart was already starting to race with special feelings. Let me see the curse first, Hikaru said, eyeing the young woman before him. It seemed that the original male protagonist from Dark Gathering was nowhere in sight, probably due to the merged setting causing some characters to vanish. No matter, that was a small detail. Hearing him, Aiko hesitated. But with Yaoi chiming in, she reluctantly took off her gloves while everyone looked on. Beneath them lay a pair of hands covered in white, wart-like growths. Chapter 26, Selling Her Sister. Warty growths covered both of the young woman's palms and appeared to be spreading up her arms. Even Suna Saitri couldn't help feeling a chill at the sight. The dense clusters were downright creepy. Can't you cut them off first and then treat her? She asked. No. Every 3 or 4 months, Aiko goes to a shrine where a Maiko, shrine maiden, trims off the extra threads. Even if they get completely cut away, they always grow back. Hazuki Yaoi answered. The Maiko said that unless the curse is removed altogether, it'll never truly go away. After hearing this, no one else spoke. Hikaru stepped forward for a closer look. As he gently touched the growths, Aiko let out a quiet gasp of pain. They're connected to her nerves and blood vessels. That's definitely tricky. He recalled Yaoi's mention of a Maiko, meaning they'd already sought help from someone with spiritual power. But apparently, the Maiko's power only treated symptoms and not the root cause, and it involved painful procedures. Aiko gave a small sigh, though she quickly forced away her gloom. Honestly, I've sort of gotten used to it. Besides, didn't Gishamojin say I only have to wait 5 more years? Aiko, the Maiko also warned that your curse could worsen over time. 5 years from now, even Gishamojin might be helpless. Yaoi reminded her. Huh? She really said that? Aiko froze. Alright, enough with the pity act. While the curse is troublesome, it's not without a solution. Hikaru examined the girl's body. From sensing her aura, he could tell a blackish energy lurked inside, drawing closer and closer to merging with her own life force. Once fully fused, it would be very difficult to handle. Hazuki Yaoi was momentarily taken aback. He just said it was troublesome, and now he's saying there's a way? But I literally just finished purifying Gishamojin, so I can't do it today. Let me rest up, and you can contact me again in a few days. I also need time to figure out my fee. Isn't a benefit enough? Aiko is a well-known beauty at her school. There's a whole line of guys chasing her from East Street to West Street. Yaoi asked, puzzled. And if that's not enough, I can make a sacrifice for you too. I promise I won't call the cops. A benefit? What benefit? Aiko poked her head over, asking curiously. You know. This and that. As Yaoi explained, Aiko's cheeks visibly reddened. She quickly pulled Yaoi into her arms, pressing the little girl's head down with an awkward smile. "I'm sorry to trouble you." Yaoi was just spouting nonsense. "She's a kid and doesn't know better." "It's fine. I never took it seriously," Hikaru replied calmly. "But I was being serious." Yaoi wasn't backing down. For her, trading a bit of benefit for someone to remove Aiko's curse was a deal of a lifetime. Besides, Hikaru was handsome and charismatic, letting him have a peek wouldn't be a loss at all. Anyway, we'll be in touch. You can name your price when we do, and we'll do our best to accommodate you," Aiko said. Though she had to wait a few days, she wasn't about to complain after all. The Maiko who served a deity couldn't fix this curse, and here was someone giving her a definite chance at relief. She was plenty grateful. Hikaru was equally fine with it. First, he genuinely needed rest after purifying Gishamojin. Second, he hadn't decided what compensation to ask for. He wasn't some pervert so starved that he'd jump at every benefit. And if the girl's purity was on the table, well, he wouldn't exactly refuse, but nor was he desperate enough to set that as his sole requirement. They exchanged contact info on social media. Then Aiko drove off with Yaoi in the back seat, who waved goodbye to Hikaru from the window. Left behind at the foot of the eerie temple mountain were Hikaru, Sona, and Tsubaki. With Gishamojin purified, the place lost some of its creepiness and grew calmer. "Sona, do devils often cooperate with deities?" Hikaru asked suddenly. Surprised, she adjusted her glasses. "Only in some cases. Take Gishamojin, for example, a deity in charge of guiding deceased infants. As long as such deities aren't causing trouble, we in the underworld will grant them some leeway, since lost souls need somewhere to go. The underworld does have its own department for that, but from what my sister tells me, managing the spirits of the dead has been increasingly difficult for ages, which is why there are more incidents of evil spirits attacking the living." She sighed. Despite their efforts, evil spirits tended to hide so deeply, sometimes possessing humans, that devils could only respond once an attack happened and was clearly not caused by a person. The back-and-forth investigation wasted a lot of time. Suddenly, something else dawned on her. "Wait, he just called me Sona by name. And we're in Japan, so... well, whatever. Deepening our partnership is probably for the best right now." Hikaru's strength had already shattered her understanding. Sona decided it was fine for him to address her that way. "By the way, you completed this request perfectly. Do you want anything in particular as a reward? Money, antiques, gold, or maybe something exclusive to the underworld?" "Nah, I'm good on money. Do you have any spellbooks for magic training?" Hikaru asked. Though he could manipulate magical energy, he'd never studied formal magic systematically. Apart from releasing magic power offensively, he didn't really know much or wasn't very proficient at anything else. Chapter 27, Kobua Grimoire. I do have one. Normally, no outsider could get access to it, but considering the impact of this incident, nobody should have much to say if I bring you a copy from my family. Sona Saitri nodded. For humans, a grimoire from the underworld is certainly a treasure. Most low-level devils don't have access, either. But she was the heir of the Saitri clan. Given how significant it was that Hikaru had cleansed Gishamojin, presenting him with a grimoire seemed fitting. It might take a few days, though. I still need my father's approval first. All right. Hikaru didn't haggle further. It was already rare enough to have an opportunity for systematic magic study. Once he learned real magic, his abilities could advance another step. And with his passive heaven rewards diligence, training results would come even more easily. Reaching or even surpassing the Mao, Devil King, level 1 day wouldn't be out of the question. Previously, he hadn't put much stock in returning to the Campione world because, for a mere Great Knight class sorcerer, those at the apex gods and godslayers would treat him like a small fry. However, he could bide his time in this fusion world, amassing power so that once the world-crossing gate's energy reached 100%, he wouldn't be unprepared. Of course, at present Hikaru was already strong enough to handle what came his way. Otherwise, he wouldn't have bothered partnering with Ryaz, Sona, and the others. "Oh, and if anything else comes up that I could help with, let me know," Hikaru said. That remark was directed not only at Sona but also at Tsubaki Shinra. After all, Shinra was no ordinary surname. In Tokyo, one of the 5 great clans held influence, and one of those was the Shinra. These 5 families were notoriously conservative, rejecting any forces they considered outside their system. Because sacred gears are randomly bestowed upon human souls, clan members found to possess such heretical powers would often be ostracized or worse. At best, they'd be exiled from the family. At worst, they might be driven to take their own lives. Tsubaki Shinra had once suffered persecution from her own clan for harboring a sacred gear rather like Ryaz's queen, Eike no Himejima. After they used a teleportation circle to send Hikaru away, Sona turned a questioning gaze on Tsubaki. Tsubaki, are you close to Hikaru in private? No. We only have a normal connection. Why do you ask, Keiku, President? Because when he left, he was looking at you the most. Could it be? You're his type? That's impossible. President, don't tease me. Tsubaki was at a loss, half annoyed and half amused. Sure, she had a decent impression of Hikaru, but it was nothing concrete. And she and Sona were close even if they were in a master-servant relationship. It was more akin to the friendly bonds in Ryaz's group. Compared to me, you're the popular one, President. If he were truly interested, you'd be the obvious choice. Hikaru is indeed a very capable prospective husband, far better than any of the candidates my family proposed. Eh? President, don't tell me you really. Shocked, Tsubaki covered her mouth. She'd only been speaking casually, could she have guessed right? Unfortunately, I'm not interested in dating or marriage right now, at least until my dream is fulfilled. I'm not thinking about marriage at all. So adjusted her glasses, her eyes unwavering. True, your aspiration is a tough one. Still, we'll always have your back. Tsubaki said wistfully. 3 days after Gishamojin was purified, an unremarkable taxi drove along the road at the foot of the mountain. Only after it had traveled some 10 kilometers away from the temple did the passengers start talking. Seems we arrived too late. Didn't expect Gishamojin here to have already been purified. The speaker was a young blonde man in a suit and hat, wearing a smile with eyes half closed. Without letting the mummy's arm absorb that miasma, Lord Kabu's resurrection will be delayed again. So the devil faction was the one who purified Gishamojin? A gothic Lolita girl in black and white, also with blonde hair and purple lipstick, asked from the front passenger seat. Maybe. After all, the underworld has plenty of secrets we don't know. An older man in monk's robes, bald except for a few scattered hairs, sat next to the suited fellow. He nodded and said, by the way, I heard on the interweb that recently there's been an exorcist hunter who uses ruthless tactics, killing all stray devils, ghouls, or evil spirits without mercy. The blonde man in the suit added, yes, apparently in another devil-controlled territory, 2 pretty strong ghouls were taken out and it seems to be that same exorcist hunter. Huh? You think maybe he's the one who purified Gishamojin? The gothic Lolita asked in surprise. If that's so, we'd better keep an eye on him. Chapter 28, The Moonless Dawn Embryo. But the gothic Lolita girl's guess was rejected by the monk in the robes. Purifying Gishamojin isn't something an ordinary exorcist can accomplish. Besides, when we passed by that Buddhist temple, I sensed a fleeting trace of life flame. Though faint, it strongly hinted at senjutsu. And more importantly, that area is under tight watch by the Saitri family. An exorcist is unlikely to use senjutsu and even less likely to come and go from that temple as he pleases. Most likely, the underworld discovered a way to handle the situation. After all, the city's lord is the heir of the Saitri household, and also Leviathan Sama's younger sister. The older generation hadn't managed to solve the problem, so nobody would expect Emir Jr. to handle it alone. The elderly monk surmised that the higher-ups of the underworld must have found a solution. Hearing this, the man and woman in the car agreed affairs involving deities and devils wouldn't fall to some random exorcist. What a pity. Now that Gishamojin is purified, we can't let Lord Kabu devour her power for growth. They referred to Lord Kabu, also called the Moonless Dawn Embryo. It was a being crafted by upper-tier evil spirits through ritual sacrifices of human lives. Their goal, to create a monster capable of overturning the current biosphere. If it matured fully, they estimated, it could rival underworld Na'au or even main deities from various mythologies. In time, they would build a paradise ruled by evil spirits, just like the other mythic factions that hold most of the world's resources. But just as a living creature requires time to develop from a fertilized egg, so too did Kobu exist only as an embryo. Feeding it demanded a steady supply of energy. Originally, Gishamojin and her tens of thousands of infant spirits would have been the perfect meal. Now, clearly, they'd lost any chance to exploit that place. We'll stick to our original plan, then, old man. Conveniently, one of our minions who took over a school's head cook poisoned quite a few students and teachers in the cafeteria. Let's send Lord Kobu to consume the freshly deceased souls. After all, if we don't gather them, they'll just vanish on their own. Let's do that. The elder nodded. At that point, the gothic Lolita girl continued, what about the exorcist, then? If things go on like this, he may find us. And I'm very interested in him. Keep monitoring him. If we get a lead, we'll send someone in. If the chance arises, best to take his body for our own, make him one of us. We do need to expand our ranks, after all. Meanwhile, ever since that night, Hikaru's routine was simple, attend class by day, return home to train by evening. In his downtime, He also studied the banner Gishamojin had gifted him. A sacred gear. Its capabilities weren't bad. Once activated, it deployed a formation that could trap or kill, covering an area roughly the size of a school field. And that was just its basic function. Another ability let it absorb souls, growing more powerful over time, very much like the legendary Myriad Soul banner. Sacred gears really do come in all shapes and sizes. Shame it's not a Longinus, just an ordinary type. Hikaru sighed softly. If it were a Longinus, perhaps it could even suck in the souls of gods. Then he could just fling out a few godly remnants in battle instead of going in person. But he wasn't too bothered, this flag was just a bonus. Whether he had it or not made little difference to him. He pressed on with his daily practice, especially regarding Immortal Chi and Senjutsu. Light power and devil magic didn't strengthen the body much, but Immortal Chi did. The stronger his Chi, the more robust his physique became, and the firmer his foundation, letting him better wield a state's full potential. A high-performance car is wasted on a poor driver, after all. At school, though, he couldn't train Senjutsu. Instead, he was content flipping through extracurricular novels during class. He'd already mastered the curriculum, so there was no point in reviewing boring textbooks. But at that moment, the previously noisy classroom went quiet. Glancing up, he saw a striking figure approaching Tsubaki Shinra, the black-haired beauty wearing the Kwa Academy girl's uniform. Noting her arrival, Hikaru had a good guess as to why she'd come. Chapter 29, Grimoire Tsubaki Shinra. Although she wasn't the most dazzling beauty in Kwa Academy, where gorgeous girls abounded, her looks and talents still garnered a considerable following within the school. The moment she appeared in the classroom, many students instinctively focused their attention on her. And upon seeing her head straight for Hikaru's desk, both boys and girls alike held their breath. "Hikaru, could you come with me for a moment?" "Sure." He nodded slightly, having already gleaned her intent from her eyes. Business about the Grimoire was not something to discuss openly in front of everyone. "How's Suna doing lately?" He closed his extracurricular novel and stood up. Tsubaki turned and walked out of the classroom. "Thanks to you, the president is doing quite well." She offered a faint smile, which immediately made a number of male classmates discreetly pound their chests in frustration. Because typically, neither the vice president nor the student council president displayed any warmth toward other students, and yet here she was, smiling at Hikaru. What did that imply? It meant their relationship was definitely not ordinary. Once the two left, chatter in the classroom and hallway erupted to an even higher pitch. "Did you see that? Hikaru even called the president by her first name. Does that mean they're already?" "No way, right? They don't usually hang out or anything." "That's where you're wrong. I bet they've been secretly meeting up. No other way they'd be on such familiar terms. And wasn't Princess Ryaz also interested in him not long ago? She's been pretty close to him for a while. But now the student council president steps in? Is this some big love rivalry? Are both these princesses vying for the same man?" Hearing the girls' excited gossip, the few remaining boys sank into despair. It's over. Everything's over. They could still cling to some faint hope before, but now they had no illusions left. "Ariri. You've known Hikaru since middle school, right? Do you know anything about him secretly meeting with the president?" A girl's voice suddenly brought the blonde twin-tailed Ariri out of her trance. "Huh? How would I know? A womanizer like him? I don't care what he does." Ariri craned her neck, trying to keep her agitation under wraps, forcing her tone to remain calm. "Oh, I see." The girl walked away, looking puzzled, while Ariri's clenched fists remained tightly wound in her uniform sleeves. Ever since entering high school, Hikaru had been surrounded by more and more girls, and she'd barely been able to speak to him. Could it be there's no way for me to get closer to Hikaru except by taking the initiative? Meanwhile, Hikaru and Tsubaki Shinra arrived at the student council office. Since it was lunchtime, no one else was around. In that spacious room, besides Hikaru and the black-haired vice president, only Suna Saitri sat at a desk, busy with paperwork. Sunlight poured in through the windows, illuminating Suna's ebony hair with a glossy brilliance. That inky black hair accentuated her fair skin, and her sharp yet delicate features looked especially striking as she worked. Noticing the door open, Suna glanced up. With just that simple motion, she exuded a captivating air. No wonder even some girls admired her deeply. But Hikaru was unmoved. "So, Tsubaki said the item I asked for has arrived?" Tsubaki gave a little start when he used her real name, but managed to maintain her composure. "Yes. My family was overjoyed to hear Gishamojin's affair had been resolved. Not only did it boost my record as a territory manager, but it also assures the general public they can depend on us more. My sister fully agreed to me giving you a grimoire." Suna smiled sweetly. It was obvious Hikaru had inadvertently solved a major headache for her, thereby increasing her leverage in her family and in the underworld. Granted, it was still early days, but at least she was heading in a promising direction. Having said that, Sona handed Hikaru a book bound in black leather. This is our general spell book. Every member of the Saitri family studies it from childhood. Apart from common, universal magic, it includes some of the Saitri clan's specialized water magic as well. Learning it might be challenging, so if you have any questions, you can come to me. When Hikaru accepted the tome, Sona continued, there's a restriction placed on it. You have to channel your own magical energy to see the text, ordinary humans won't see anything. You're giving me Saitri magic? Isn't it an issue to share externally? Hikaru asked. It's fine. Though I'm acting on my own, this magic isn't anything top secret. Consider it a small token of my appreciation for you, Hikaru. Sona lightly pushed up her glasses and smiled. Chapter 30, Aogiri. Hikaru accepted Sona's gift without pretense. He understood her motives. This was a gesture of goodwill in return, and he'd remember it. One day, he would repay the favor. Aogiri base. The squad of ghouls they'd sent out had been wiped out, and even the spears of light from the fallen angels didn't help. This was big news. They couldn't just brush it off after hearing a minimal report. For a while now, they'd been conducting investigations in secret. To avoid alerting the enemy, some of them disguised themselves as harmless civilians, wandering around the antique cafe where it all happened. Through a combination of threats and bribes, they managed to gather some surveillance footage. The time and location of the incident were quite specific, so it wasn't hard to find a relevant video. Though a bit fuzzy, it at least pointed them in a direction. Piecing the clues together, Totara and other senior members of Aogiri placed the blame on those devils, or at least someone connected to them. As for an exorcist? A real exorcist wouldn't appear in this city. The stray exorcists around here were in cahoots with them, not enemies. Totara-sama, it must be the devils trying to trace everything back to us. Doesn't matter. We're just about to launch that plan, anyway. Totara said noncommittally. At that moment, the secret room's door swung open from the outside. In walked a few girls dressed in Kwa Academy uniforms, strutting in catwalk fashion. Leading them was a black-haired girl, her hair flowing neatly down her back. To her left and right were two others, one with black twin tails, the other with a side ponytail. The latter looked somewhat more mature. Judging by their positions, the tall girl in the center was clearly in charge. They entered chatting merrily, unbothered by the room full of bloodthirsty ghouls. Rainer, it's so amusing how you toyed with that guy. Maybe I should do the same? Don't even think about it. We've been lurking here all this time and have found only one sacred gear user who hasn't been discovered by those devils yet. Not so easy to find more. After speaking, Rainer turned to face the ghouls. Even though they were collaborating, she couldn't hide her disdain and loathing for these red-eyed, man-eating monsters. In her eyes, they were little better than beasts. If her fallen angel superior hadn't been short on manpower, she wouldn't have bothered recruiting these creatures. Rainer-sama. The ghouls bowed their heads when she paused. I have a task for you. 3 nights from now, make yourselves busy. That's all. She was ready to leave, but Totara stopped her. Rainer-sama, that might lure in the devils. That's exactly the point. Your job is to draw the devils' attention. But no buts. Unless you intend to defy us? If you jeopardize the plan, Kokobi-sama won't forgive you, and you won't even be standing here to argue. With that, Rainer and the other 2 fallen angels departed. Even after they left, the ghouls couldn't shake off their fear. Kokobi was a figure of biblical legend, known to have once battled the greatest god of the Bible in ancient times. How could lesser beings ever hope to oppose someone like that? Though Totara felt displeased with Rainer's condescending attitude, they couldn't deny her confidence was infectious. For a powerful fallen angel, whoever wiped out their comrades was just another weed to be uprooted. As for stirring up chaos in 3 nights, the ghouls knew exactly how to do that. Go where people gathered at night, kill a few humans, so panic a sure way to draw the devils out. Returning home, Hikaru immersed himself in studying the grimoire. After channeling magic into it, demonic text appeared on the pages. Since Sona Saitri had evidently anticipated he might not understand it, every symbol came with handwritten annotations, a clear sign this was Sona's personal copy. Scanning it from beginning to end, it was just as Sona said, beyond the basic, universal magic things like telepathy, short-range teleportation, sealing, flight, magic blasts, and magic shields. There were also some water element spells unique to the Saitri family. After one pass, he started from the basics. Thanks to his existing foundation and innate talent, his progress soared. In a mere 2 hours, he'd mastered all the universal spells. He had also quickly reached a comfortable grasp of the water-based magic. Lifting a hand, Hikaru let invisible magic surge outward, affecting the water in his cup. Under his mental control, it morphed into various animal shapes before finally forming an arrow shape and whistling through the air, piercing a good 3 meters into the ground. Chapter 31, Chaos? Not bad. Its power is already comparable to a standard magic blast. The most basic way of using magic is to release magical energy like a shell or projectile. But the Citri family's water-based magic lets one manipulate water, imbuing it with magic until it's no weaker than a typical magic blast, and because water can take any shape, you can freely mold it into all sorts of forms. Controlling water. No wonder the Citri clan is among the top pure-blood devils and even produced a Milo. Hikaru mused. Achieving this level of mastery in such a short period was probably beyond even Suna's expectations. Estate, watch what I can do for you. Feeling affectionate, Hikaru finished his training and approached Estate, who was watching anime. He demonstrated his newly acquired water manipulation magic, shaping the water into Estate's favorite cartoon characters, then into various foods. Though they only had the shape, Hikaru's skill in the arts was very high. Aside from color mismatches, the forms were remarkably lifelike. When he converted the water to a jelly-like consistency, Estate even tried taking a bite, but of course it tasted like plain water. Haha, there's real jelly in the fridge. Go have some of that. Hikaru teased, ruffling Estate's hair as she padded off to the refrigerator. While Estate was nibbling on jelly, Hikaru received a message on his phone. The sender was Konko, accompanied by a sticker of a crying cat. At once, he knew why. She must have just finished watching the Edge Runners anime. With so many shows nowadays ending on a bright note, Edge Runners blindsides viewers with a painful twist in the final episode. It certainly leaves people reeling. Konko would likely be moping for at least a week. 3 days slipped by quietly. In that time, aside from a quick hello from Yaoi, nothing unusual happened. Hikaru focused on honing his various abilities, successfully pushing his Immortal Chi to a new threshold. In the high school DxD setting, each mythical faction measures power differently, and there's only sparse information on Senjutsu. Because he couldn't train in truly advanced Senjutsu, Hikaru simply boosted his life flame. As a result, his body and mind advanced to the next level. Immortal Chi not only strengthens the body and nourishes the spirit, but also unleashes a person's latent potential, much like in martial arts films. Essentially, Hikaru converted latent power into actual strength. His skin, muscles, bones, organs, blood, and brain all underwent a transformation. His 5 senses were so keen that even hushed conversation outside his soundproof apartment reached his ears. The result was so dramatic that even he found it staggering. Clearly, he'd underestimated Immortal Chi. The only downside was that he hadn't gained any powerful, large-scale attack spells. But that didn't matter too much. He mentally gauged his current state, imagining a fight against the heads of major magic associations in the Campione world. Aside from not having quite as much combat experience, he wouldn't be outclassed. Put differently, he had ascended to the Campione setting's mortal pinnacle, the Holy Knight rank, at only 16 years old. Even in Campione, that was unique. Still, Hikaru felt no prideful conceit. With his abilities, it was only natural. Nighttime. They were nearly out of groceries, so Hikaru took Estate to the largest supermarket in Kuwa Town. Despite his newfound power, his day-to-day nutritional needs had soared, so they filled the cart with pricey ingredients. Money wasn't an issue, and on top of that, Sona's generous payment for the recent job could cover 50 years of an ordinary family's expenses. He also tossed in plenty of snacks Estate liked. Just as they were heading toward the exit, a sudden uproar broke out nearby. Instead of leaving, the crowd came stampeding back into the store. Help! Somebody help! Murder! There's a murderer! Panic and screams filled the air. A faint smell of blood drifted on the breeze. Those chasing the fleeing shoppers were ghouls displaying their kagn. Chapter 32, Diversion. The ghouls who revealed their kagn launched into a slaughter among the crowd, utterly without restraint. In just a few seconds, several people met a gruesome end. The sight of blood and severed limbs only intensified the panic, and the entire mall descended into chaos. Bathing in blood, the ghouls licked it greedily from their hands, tasting the warm metallic tang. The commotion they were causing further incited their frenzy, adrenaline surging. Confronted with the screams of the humans, the gloom they once felt under constant pressure lifted. Their minds filled with the sense that humans are trash food. Humans were meant to be our prey. The ghouls rallied themselves. Whatever the fallen angels had ordered them to do, at least for now, they were having a good time. But then they ran into someone in their way. What the hell are you scumbags doing? Standing before them, kagn unfurled and eyes glowing red, was a high school girl in a Kuwa Academy uniform. Tuka Kirishima. Witnessing this horrifying scene, she was furious. Not only were these criminals the same species as her, but now, with this brazen attack, they'd make life even harder for those ghouls who wanted to coexist peacefully. After all, devils could have them all driven out, or worse, with just a word. Hey, you're one of us, aren't you? Come join in, can't you hear how sweet their screams are? Seeing Tuka block the way, they extended a warm invitation. She replied by unleashing her kagn, smashing one of them into a wall. Who'd join you? Right now, she wished she could kill them all. You dare attack me? The ghoul she'd struck clambered back up, quickly healing his injuries. All that peaceful CO existence talk is so damn annoying. Doesn't matter, before long, we'll have our own turf in this world. As for traitors like you who feed on ghoul-made junk food, you'll be the first ones we eat. Their senses were frenzied by the taste of blood, and they rushed her en masse. After a few exchanges, a sharp spike pierced Tuka's shoulder. The intense pain nearly made her black out. They were about to deliver a finishing blow when suddenly a sound tore through the air. Before any of them could react, watery spikes penetrated the ghouls' skulls. In the blink of an eye, their brains were destroyed, and they collapsed in a heap, their bodies and kagn, suddenly limp as jelly. Even on a weekend, you lot can't settle down? A calm voice drifted by. Tuka reflexively glanced behind her and saw someone standing there, Hikaru, who'd appeared without her noticing. Her pupils shrank. As soon as she recognized him, she quickly withdrew her kagn, her eyes reverting to normal. Hi, Hikaru. She was at a loss for words. She and the cafe ghouls tried to live as ordinarily as humans, rarely using their kagn. But now this classmate of hers had witnessed everything. You did fine. Now, go call an ambulance. Those people who got attacked aren't dead yet, and you need first aid for your wound, too. Having said that, Hikaru stepped past her toward the ghoul he'd intentionally left alive. Tuka looked at him in astonishment, never imagining that the always cool Hikaru would show concern for her. And she was a ghoul. Even if she didn't consume human flesh, she was still an outsider. Yet, when she recalled his gaze from moments ago, it felt as though it probed the softest part of her heart. She was snapped out of her reverie by the surviving ghoul's pain screams. Hastily, she pulled out her phone to call for emergency services, and did her best to help the injured. Meanwhile, Hikaru used water spikes to pin the last remaining ghoul's limbs and kagn to the floor, pressing his foot upon the ghoul's head. Spill it. What's going on? Under extreme pain, the ghoul's eyes cleared, and he quickly explained everything he knew. It was fuzzy information, but at least it pointed to the fallen angels pulling the strings. I see. A contemplative light flashed in Hikaru's eyes. He'd more or less guessed as much. This was just a diversion by the fallen angels. These ghouls were nothing but cannon fodder, dragged out to draw attention. The real target was probably Ryaz and her group. In all likelihood, they'd be heading here soon. He turned around to call out, Tuka, fill Ryaz in for me, okay? Honey? Tuka, who was busy dressing someone's wounds, looked over her shoulder in shock, only to find that Hikaru had vanished without a trace. Late night in the mountains near Kwa town. A derelict church lay at the summit, its battered structure steeped in the weight of history. Cracks in the old stone walls were entwined with vines, as though lamenting forgotten days. Under cover of darkness, the place was eerily still. Yet deep in its basement, a special ritual was taking place. Rainer gazed at the unconscious Hyuga bound to a cross, smiling faintly. Let's get started. Then she shot Totoro and his group a contemptuous look. All of you, out. Keep an eye on this place. Don't let anyone in until the ritual's done. Chapter 33, Totoro. According to Rainer's plan, Totoro and his group weren't supposed to be here in the first place. But they came anyway. She was annoyed by their insubordination still. With the ritual about to begin, she didn't explode in anger. She just ordered them to guard the perimeter. Even so, Totoro didn't leave right away. His gaze fell on the man bound to the cross. He opened his mouth to ask, is it actually possible to extract a sacred gear from someone's body? Of course. Why else would I waste all that time playing house with this guy? Rainer replied, clearly displeased. Now get out. Don't bother me until the ritual is finished. Understood, Rainer-sama. Totoro responded. Leading the other ghouls, he left. Under the moonlight outside, they exchanged glances. Totoro-sama, are we just gonna let this slide? Our brothers who caused that diversion will likely die. They can't beat the devils. That bitch is obviously using us as cannon fodder. A blonde ghoul spoke up, and the others agreed heatedly. They'd hoped that siding with the fallen angels would improve their circumstances, allowing them to corral humans for food. Instead, they found themselves being bossed around for menial, dangerous tasks every day. I know. Once the ritual's almost done, we head back down together. Totoro was no punching bag. Even if they were fallen angels, he wasn't going to endure this forever. Besides, he had his doubts about that legendary fallen angel from the Bible. After months of membership, they hadn't so much as glimpsed him, just Raina waving Gokobi Eel's name around to threaten them. This upcoming artifact stripping ritual was the perfect chance to make a move. Ghouls became prey only because their powers were too weak. But if they got hold of a sacred gear, They might harness its strength to change their fate. Totoro's followers shared in his ambition, and their killing intent flared as they stood waiting. Meanwhile, underground, with all preparations in place, Reina and her two companions began the ritual. A magic circle glowed brightly, and Hyuga tied to the cross let out pained groans. The principle behind forcibly taking a sacred gear is straightforward: it's bound to the host's body, so removing it requires a technique that can interfere with one's biology. The drawback is that once the gear is ripped out, if the host doesn't receive proper care in time, their life force will be drained until they die. Reina, of course, couldn't care less about a measly human survival. It wasn't long before a glowing green orb emerged from Hyuga's body. At the sight of it, Reina's face lit with eagerness. Just as she was about to grab it, a tremor came from the basement entrance. Totoro and the ghouls launched their assault. "You traitors!" Reina's eyes flared with fury. Because of her momentary shock, the fastest among them, Totoro, got there first. As the leader of Ogiri Tree, he had power on par with a low-level fallen angel. He used his Kagen for defense, forcibly enduring the other two fallen angels' attacks, and seized the sacred gear that had just been stripped from Sai's body. The artifact looked like a gauntlet. Although he'd never used it before, he instinctively put it on and channeled its power, shouting, "Boost!" A mechanical voice echoed from the emerald gemstone, and Totoro's body was immediately reinforced. Moving at blinding speed, he charged forward. Caught off guard, Reina was nearly sliced in half by his newly augmented strength. A wild melee broke out. When Hikaru arrived at the church, he found an odd scene. The fallen angels and the ghouls had turned on each other. Weren't they on the same side? A quick glance told him everything clearly. This was a case of internal betrayal. The three fallen angels were overwhelmed, wounded, and about to be overrun. They tried to break out, heading for the exit where Hikaru stood. They saw a stranger, but Reina had no time to worry about him. Her only concern was escaping alive. Totoro, however, wouldn't let them leave. He had no intention of leaving survivors. High on the success of besting three fallen angels and brimming with confidence, he swung his massive Kagen, aiming to wipe out everyone at once, including Hikaru. But Hikaru was faster. He stepped forward directly. "Die." Totoro's eyes glowed red. Having tasted fallen angel blood, every cell in his body was blazing with excitement, and the scent of Hikaru, a human, only fueled his beastly urge. The sacred gear flashed again, doubling his power once more. A mere human? He'd kill him with ease. Yet Hikaru didn't waste words. He casually brushed aside the Kagen's blow, then raised his leg in a swift kick to Totoro's chest. The sheer force shattered his Kagen defenses and sent him hurtling dozens of meters, crashing into several of his fellow ghouls before finally colliding with the wall. Chapter 34, Nonsense Idea. From among the crumbling ruins, Totoro slowly pulled himself upright, dazed. Didn't I just steal the sacred gear? How did this happen? He'd grown so strong even the fallen angels couldn't match him now, nor could any devils residing here. Humans, in his mind, were nothing but fodder. Compelled by the belief, Totoro crawled out of the rubble. His Kagen and flesh rapidly regenerated, hardening into an armor that protected his body. Like the late Naruto, he possessed formidable healing. Even losing his head would only count as a minor injury. His tail-like Kagen extended to 4 or 5 meters, fanning out like wings. Even Yoshimura from the antique cafe, in his prime wouldn't have been a match. So too with mid-level fallen angels or devils, he'd be able to fight them on equal footing. The other ghouls fell silent and simply observed. Their strength was too meager to join such a battle. Yet every one of them exuded fierce confidence, certain that with the sacred gear, Totoro-sama could slaughter anyone here. Finish him off, Totoro-sama. Soon we'll feast freely on human blood and flesh. Forget humans, we'll devour fallen angels too. For so long they'd cowered in the shadows, finally, they could step into the light. They'd heard rumors of vampires founding their own nation in Europe. Now, they envisioned forging a realm for ghouls as well. Meanwhile, the three fallen angels, cornered with no escape, gathered together. Their faces were grim and tense, eyes flickering between enemies on all sides. Who was that guy, anyway? No clue. But looks like a human? He's human. Then he's dead for sure. Let's hurry and find some other way out. Those damned vermin dare betray us. The two fallen angels seethed with outrage, their ample chests heaving in fury. Reina, on the other hand, squinted at the newcomer's face. "Hi. Hikaru? Reina, you know him? I've never met him. But while infiltrating Qua Academy, I heard about this man. Top grades in every subject, extremely good-looking, supposedly even more handsome than Azazel-sama." "Huh? More handsome than Azazel?" The two companions were astounded. Azazel, the Governor-General of all fallen angels, was renowned for his enchanting presence. Few could resist his allure. But once the torchlight from the basement fell upon the man's face, They couldn't help staring for a moment. He was indeed rather striking. However, they snapped back to reality. This isn't a beauty contest, those ghouls won't spare him. On the other side, Totoro launched his attack at Hikaru. With his power doubled again, his body was fully encased in hardened Kage, a winged juggernaut in heavy armor barreling forward with unstoppable force. Hikaru, however, neither dodged nor stepped aside. As Totoro's charge came, he casually drew back his right fist, body bending slightly in preparation, then punched straight ahead. He wanted to see his current physical limit. Whoosh! The punch tore through the air with a piercing shriek. The next second, the blow landed against Totoro's body with a thunderous boom. Even with the sacred gear's boost, he shot backward like a cannonball, the armor plating of his Kage shattering like dust. Hikaru had held little back, so the blow punched right through Totoro's torso, destroying all his Kage and most of his organs. The cheering and cursing ceased at once. Silence descended. Everyone gaped at Hikaru in disbelief, including the 3 fallen angels who had tried to escape. They swallowed hard. Is that really a human? How can a human be this strong? And from start to finish, Hikaru hadn't employed any special power, no spells, no magic. Pure physique and pure strength. He'd bested an SS plus level ghoul, one whose power was multiplied by a sacred gear, with a single punch. At S rank, a ghoul could fight a low-class fallen angel or devil in melee combat. At SS or SSS, they could easily overpower lower-class angels and devils, and even challenge mid-tier ones in close quarters. With a sacred gear's abilities, they might contend with a high-tier fallen angel or devil. Yet one punch had ended the straighter ghoul. If they didn't know Hikaru was human, they'd have suspected he was a high-level devil in disguise, one specialized in physical power. Ignoring the onlookers, Hikaru approached Totoro, who lay on the verge of death, barely clinging to life. He didn't even glance at the bronze tree leader. Instead, he crouched down and picked up the red gauntlet from the ground. Why? All we wanted was a world where ghouls could live as equals. Why stop us? Hikaru cocked his head, voice cold and flat. Your words make as much sense as your brain spouting nonsense with zero self-awareness. A world where ghouls live equally? If they'd acted like the staff at the cafe and kept their heads down, nobody would have bothered them. Hearing his retort, Totoro let out a final breath and died. After stowing away the gauntlet, Hikaru turned his attention to the remaining ghouls. Tall and handsome though he was, his aura at that moment resembled that of a malevolent deity. Wherever he looked, the ghouls trembled involuntarily. Brothers, let's take him down together. At that, they charged. But in a matter of seconds, dozens of ghouls lay dead, not one left alive. Blood soaked the floor, and the 3 fallen angels huddled in a corner, shivering. Yet Hikaru only gave them a cursory glance, then lost all interest. He could sense Ryaz's group approaching via their aura. Besides, there was another matter he needed to attend to. Chapter 35, Asia Argento Sai Hyuga hung on the crucifix, his life hanging by a thread, but surprisingly, he was still alive. Hikaru, seeing no reason to let him die, infused him with a bit of life energy to keep him from drawing his last breath. After all, he had already taken the Red Dragon Emperor's sacred gear from him. Whether they'd interact again in the future was another matter. Aside from Sai, Hikaru sensed yet another life sign. He pushed open a door half hidden beneath the debris, revealing a blonde girl fast asleep. Her golden hair fanned out around her, face still slightly childish, clearly of European descent. The carnage and noise outside didn't seem to disturb her, though from her tense expression, she likely wasn't sleeping well. Hikaru recognized who she was, Asia Argento, a former holy maiden of the Vatican's church, exiled for healing a devil. With nowhere to go, she ended up targeted by Rainer, who brought her to Kuat Town's church to strip her sacred gear. Hikaru only shook his head at the choice. At least in the original story, the woman had traveled all this way just to forcibly remove Asia's sacred gear here. It made twice the effort for half the result sound like an understatement. You've slept long enough. He spoke, and then, activating his senjutsu, dispelled the sleeping spell that held the girl captive. Asia stirred faintly, pressing a hand to her forehead, letting out a soft moan of pain. Sleeping for several days would leave anyone groggy. Where am I? She asked, blinking in confusion, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. Only moments earlier, she recalled stepping off a train. Then a fallen angel found her and brought her to a church, and she remembered nothing after that. You've been asleep for 1,000,000 years. The world outside has long since ended. Hikaru's sudden statement startled her. She looked up and saw a man with a smooth, fair face, handsome yet stern, with the faintest hint of a smile on his lips. At the sight of him, Asia's fear of this strange place melted away. She stared blankly. Compared to an angel's face, his looked even more radiant. Even an angel lacked 3 parts of his handsomeness and 3 parts of his charm, she thought. But then, through the wide-open door, she caught a glimpse of the blood-soaked scene beyond. Aside from Kegn, ghouls look perfectly human in appearance, thus, the massacre of shattered bodies and dismembered limbs was all too jarring. Asia retched reflexively, though her stomach was empty, so she only dry heaved. Satisfied that she at least had her wits, Hikaru didn't offer more help. Suddenly bang! The blocked entrance to the underground chamber was smashed open from outside. Konko, hoisting a massive chunk of rock, hammered away at the blockage. Her small frame belied impressive strength, an almost comical contrast. "What's going on here?" Rya's Greenery's voice carried from just beyond the gap. She, Eikino Himejima, and Konko Tiju all caught the overwhelming stench of blood. They'd gone to check on the disturbance in the city center only to find that someone had already handled the rampaging ghouls. Worried something else might be up, Kiba remained behind to liaise with the authorities, while the three of them dashed to the church. Right after the ghouls had attacked, one of Ryaz's familiars posted nearby detected a surge of unusual energy here. Ryaz had long monitored the fallen angels who'd infiltrated Kwa, waiting for just such an opportunity to confront them. Fallen angels. Eikino Himejima noticed the three cowering in the corner. Instantly, the trio of devils braced themselves for a fight. Yet it was obvious these fallen angels had no will left to battle. They clung to each other in fear, their terrified gazes directed deeper into the chapel. Clearly, something there frightened them more than devils did, and considering the mangled ghoul remains strewn everywhere, it was obvious a fierce struggle had taken place already. "Yo!" A voice drew their attention. Emerging from the shadows was a man they all knew well. Upon seeing his face, Ryaz froze, wide-eyed. "Hi Hikaru? What are you doing here?" She'd already learned from Kiba that the ghouls behind the terror incident had been subdued by Hikaru, but he'd disappeared by the time Kiba arrived on the scene. Ryaz assumed he'd gone home. She never expected to find him here. "I guessed." Hikaru tapped a finger to his temple, face calm and unruffled. "These ghouls. Did you kill them all?" Ryaz glanced around, spotting a gooey mess on the wall with a smashed skull, apparently a watted bronze tree high up. "Tadara. And he lay here, dead?" Shock filled her expression, while Eikino and Konko inhaled sharply at the sight. From the state of the corpses, it was clear just how the fight had ended: pure, brutal domination. In such a cramped place, even they'd struggle against so many ghouls. Only Konko and Kiba were adept at melee combat. Both Ryaz and Eikino relied on ranged magic, which would be cumbersome in close quarters. "I never knew you were this strong," Ryaz murmured, tone somewhat resentful. Hikaru had once again broken her understanding. Every time she saw him, he blew away her preconceptions. Yet she knew this was no time to chat idly. "So, Hikaru, would you mind telling me what happened here?" Chapter 36, Red Dragon Emperor. "Didn't you say you wanted me to assist you?" Hikaru gave a faint smile. "Here's the result. If there's anything else you want to know, ask the fallen angels over there. I left them alive on purpose." "So? You did it because of our agreement?" Ryaz was surprised, and also a bit moved. She'd only proposed that arrangement to bring him closer, but never expected he'd actually take it to heart. Gazing at the familiar contours of his face, she found her heart racing for reasons she couldn't explain. "I keep my promises." Hikaru dropped his smile and returned to a neutral expression. "I'll leave the cleanup to you, if that's all right." He paused for her reply, but Ryaz, lost in her imagination, failed to respond. Eikino discreetly nudged her in the waist, snapping the redhead from her thoughts. Suddenly flustered, she spoke. "Huh? Right. Yes, we'll handle it. I am the Lord of Kwa Town, after all, and it seems I haven't helped much with the main issue. The least I can do is deal with the aftermath." Ryaz pulled herself together, drawing up her chest in a show of confidence. "And thank you, Hikaru. Truly. It's nothing. I got something out of it, too." Hikaru shrugged. Right then, the others noticed a blonde girl in a nun's habit standing quietly behind him. Her emerald green eyes shone like gemstones. Asia, having picked up bits and pieces of conversation, understood that these tall, buxom ladies were the devils who ruled this city. As a former holy maiden raised in the church, she'd been taught devils were evil. Even though she had once used her sacred gear to heal a devil, her fear of them hadn't diminished. "Who is she?" Ryaz asked, intrigued that a neatly dressed nun, apparently defenseless, would be here. "Asia Argento, a holy maiden from the church. I'm sure you've heard of her. She was framed and ended up here, counting money for others without realizing it." Hikaru's concise explanation hit home. A quick investigation would have confirmed it. Asia's expression flickered upon hearing the word framed. Had it not been for that devil she healed, she might still be safely in the church. But did she regret it? No. She believed the God-given power to heal was meant for saving lives any life, regardless of rank or race. "President, there's another Kwa Academy student here. Hizora's weak, but he's alive. Konko's voice called out from some distance away. Ryaz turned and saw Sai Hyuga, still wearing the school uniform, lying there with barely any sign of life. Shock overtook her face. Why did the fallen angels bring him here? She did know Rainer had lured Sai out, yet she refrained from immediate action to figure out the true plot. President, it looks like his sacred gear has vanished. Aiko chimed in. Huh? Ryaz blinked, perplexed. It's with me. Hikaru answered before they could even process it fully. He raised the crimson gauntlet now strapped onto his own arm. Red plating wrapped around the forearm, a green gem at the back of the hand, and the edges overlapped like dragon scales. It looked like a normal gauntlet, so that's what the fallen angels must have been after, right? But why would they want a sacred gear like that? I mean, it's just a common one. It's not common. It's one of the Longinus, the boosted gear of the Red Dragon Emperor. At Hikaru's statement, everyone froze. Even the three fallen angels cowering in the corner snapped to attention, Rainer among them, their faces streaked with blood and grime but now shaped with utter disbelief. A Longinus. It's actually a Longinus? But we all thought it was just an ordinary sacred gear. In truth, Rainer's main target was always Asia's healing-type gear. Stripping Sai's gear had been a dry run for the ritual and a chance to offer a small reward to her subordinates. But who would have guessed that gauntlet they dismissed as a low-level sacred gear was actually the rarest and strongest type Longinus? If Rainer herself had gotten hold of that power, she might have instantly ascended to Supreme Fallen Angel status. The thought of how Totoro had messed everything up filled her with rage. You've told us all this. Aren't you afraid I'll report it? Ryaz asked, half-jokingly, reining in her shock. You won't. And even if word spreads, I don't care. Having obtained the Red Dragon Emperor's Longinus, Hikaru knew his future path would be smoother. Let the other factions watch him, he'd deal with it. One enemy shows up, I kill one. A group appears, I kill a group. Chapter 37, I can't have a baby. Because he was a transmigrator with no family attachments in this world, Hikaru had few qualms about doing whatever aligned with his principles. And in this world, strength was everything. Seeing the firm resolve and aura in his eyes, Ryaz, Aiko, and Konko felt Hikaru's importance to them grow, as though he was beginning to occupy a space in their hearts. I definitely won't say anything. If you ever need my help, just let me know. Ryaz's smile faded, she spoke in a serious tone. Hikaru didn't reply either way, but her earnest attitude was easy to appreciate. He felt no exception to that. Though, from his perspective, about the only thing he might need Ryaz's help with would be having children. Turning then to the teary-eyed Asia behind him, Hikaru asked, You have nowhere to go, right? Why not go with her? He gestured at Ryaz. And be reborn as a devil, living on as one of her servants? But Asia desperately shook her head, clinging to his right hand. Her expression revealed a pleading look. It was understandable. Asia had led a tumultuous life, becoming a holy maiden, only to be exiled, then tricked by fallen angels. Though she didn't exactly despise devils, she'd been raised with a deeply ingrained fear of them. Moreover, she'd never truly faced a life-or-death experience. Here she woke to see Hikaru first, instinctively treating him as her only lifeline, unwilling to leave his side. All right, then. In that case, stay at my place and do a bit of housework. Is that something you can handle? Any normal person would say yes whether they could or not. But Asia had undergone strict training as a child saint. Except for making money, she'd learned how to be quite self-sufficient from a young age. Asia nodded frantically, tears spilling onto her habit. Then let's go. Hikaru said. He briefly greeted Ryaz and the others before preparing to leave. Right before he left, he asked casually, What do you plan to do with Sai Hyuga and the fallen angels? Ryaz pondered a few moments before responding, I'll wipe that student's memories of all this. As for the fallen angels, I need to consult my brother Lord Lucifer. It involves diplomacy between two major factions, so I have to be careful. I'm off. With that, Hikaru left without hesitation. Night fell, the stars twinkled, and a gentle evening breeze blew. Asia finally lifted the weight off her heart as she gazed at the open sky, but now felt apprehensive looking at Hikaru. Hop on. He pointed at a motorcycle. Though he could fly, he rather enjoyed the feeling of driving. Nervously, Asia climbed onto the back seat, unsure whether to wrap her arms around him. Yet once the bike started moving, to avoid falling off, she instinctively hugged him from behind. Huh. At first it felt strange, but soon Asia experienced an unfamiliar sense of warmth and security. It was odd. Even in the church, surrounded by benevolent priests, bishops, and nuns, she'd never felt this way. No one had ever hugged her, nor had she ever hugged anyone. After being exiled from the church, she learned just how harsh the world could be. Cold air, cold water, a cold bed. But Hikaru's back felt so very warm. This precious warmth calmed her uneasy heart, and half her body leaned onto him. She closed her eyes, wearing a look of contentment. Back home, Hikaru showed Asia her new room and then left. Asia, seeing a luxurious bedroom she'd never even imagined before, ran her hands over the soft, pristine sheets, tears falling uncontrollably again. In that moment, she made a silent resolution: no matter what happened in the future, she would spend her life repaying him. And then her thoughts wandered to Hikaru's cool face. If I'm to repay him with my entire life? If one day he wants that sort of thing? Should I agree? Or should I agree right away? As her mind spun with wild fantasies, a small hand alighted on her shoulder, making Asia jump. Whirling around, she found a petite silver-haired girl in a dress looking even younger than herself. Her fear ebbed away. And you are? Hikaru is my master. I am his sword. Whatever he tells me to do, I do. The girl, a state, regarded Asia without expression, feeling vaguely unhappy about this new blonde beauty Hikaru had brought home. I'm Asia Argento. Please take care of me. Asia offered a handshake, but Estate simply turned around and left. Asia stood there, baffled, wondering if she had somehow offended the girl. Chapter 38, Drake. Regardless of how those two are getting along, Hikaru is now examining his own gains. Besides Asia, the greatest trophy from this operation is undoubtedly the sacred gear, boosted gear of the Red Dragon Emperor, which is also part of Hikaru's plan. To achieve god slaying under the best possible conditions, the most accessible powerful item early on is precisely this gear. In the past, it was one of the two heavenly dragons that sowed chaos in the world, a terrifying dragon feared by countless factions. Though it can't compare to Aphis, Great Red, and other top-level existences in the DxD world, it's on par with the next tier of beings known as Transcendents. And notably, this kind of sacred gear doesn't require a so-called soul binding. As long as you have it, anyone can use it. The difference lies in how much of its power you can draw out. If your aptitude is lacking, you can only use its most basic effects. For example, Tutor is double, but in fact, that skill is something any user of this gear can activate. The real dividing line is the so-called balance breaker. Essentially, it's a forbidden, ominous transformation. Like a force so destructive that it's called a sealed power. And a balance breaker for a god destroyer sacred gear is even more so. Hikaru clearly remembers how to develop a balance breaker, and he also recalls what boosted gear looks like once it goes into balance breaker mode, a full body covered in armor, resembling a common rider or armor hero. As a guy, it's quite hard to resist that sort of thing. But to unlock the balance breaker, at minimum you need the gear's spirit to awaken. As for how to awaken it, Hikaru closed his eyes and sank his consciousness into the gear. Thanks to his frequent contact with Esther before, he'd already learned how to communicate with things like spirits residing in weapons, so this time was no exception. Inside the sacred gear's mental space, there was nothing but a void of chaos. A dark red orb of light floated in the darkness. Hikaru entered, catching sight of the slumbering red dragon within its fiery red scales layered like mountain ridges, and its massive shape inspiring awe. However, Hikaru knew this was only an illusion. Long ago, the Red Dragon Emperor was dismembered by the biblical god during some ancient war. Now, only the dragon's soul remains, sealed within the crafted sacred gear. Red Dragon Emperor, open your eyes. The time has come for you to prove your worth. Hikaru said aloud. Sensing his voice, the sleeping Red Dragon Emperor felt a ripple of power. Its frail seal was instantly broken. After centuries of slumber, it awakened once more. Where is this place? Drake's consciousness stirred, sounding at first a bit dazed. But soon enough, memories and information came flooding back. So that's how it is. The previous Red Dragon Emperor is dead, so you must be this generation's host? Drake looked at the black-haired young man before it, sounding surprised. Didn't expect you to communicate directly with me here inside the gear. How are you doing this? Gifted, replied Hikaru. Well, I'll accept that. But as partners who'll fight side by side, maybe we can be a bit more honest with each other? Drake sounded mildly displeased. It felt that Hikaru didn't act like a host but more like an owner. Still, some kind of host was better than none. In the past, Drake had far stranger wielders. At least this one looked capable. In a family, everyone has their own privacy, let alone you and me, who just met. Hikaru said, shaking his head. Back when he only watched anime, he never realized how talkative Drake could be. Now it felt slightly excessive. Fine, but what did you come in for anyway? Now that I'm awake, we can talk normally with you on the outside, too. That's exactly the problem. I value privacy a lot, so I want you to appear only during combat. Otherwise, keep quiet. Hey, that's too much, partner. Drake objected. That's basically forcing me. Besides, now that I'm awake, how would we even do that? You expect me to just sleep all day until you call me out for a fight? Hearing that, Drake's manifestation quivered. It felt its host was even more peculiar than the last ones, and if it couldn't sleep, what then? I don't think it's over the top, and I do have a way to fix it, Hikaru said. Then, in his mind, he silently summoned Esther. A glow like moonlight radiated within the gear's mental space, swiftly condensing into a silver-haired girl in a simple dress, or more precisely, a silver-haired lily. Hikaru, what do you need me for? Said Esther, turning to glance at Drake's form. A big dog? Did you adopt a new pet? Hey, I'm not a dog. I'm a dragon, the legendary strongest one. No ordinary dragon king compares to me, the Red Dragon Emperor. Wait, your power. What is this? Drake boasted, but then sensed an aura rolling off Esther. Within the gear's mental space, it could gauge their relative levels. Instantly, it realized even at its peak, it couldn't match this small silver-haired girl. How was that even possible? In that moment, Drake became depressed. Chapter 39, Balance Breaker Partner, who are you? And is that girl also your sacred gear? Drake's tone was no longer so arrogant. After all, having just awakened only to see this little girl surpass him was a real blow. Knowing too much isn't good for you, Hikaru replied. Then he reached out to pat Estate's head and asked softly, is there a way to make it appear only when I'm in battle? At his words, Estate sized up Drake's consciousness for a moment, then nodded. Yes. As long as you store it in the astral spirit world, it can't get out on its own. Its awareness can't break through 2 dimensions. Even simpler, then. When Hikaru first crossed over, receiving Estate as part of the beginner's package, he also got a small personal storage space taken from the Sairitsukai no Blade Dance setting of the spirit world. It became his private item. Wait a minute. Partner, you're not really gonna lock me in that so-called spirit world, are you? Realizing Hikaru was serious, Drake began to panic. Listen up, the sacred gear's full power can only come forth when the host and the gear's soul are in tune. Doing it your way, you might not even reach Balance Breaker. Drake was trying to leverage its power as a bargaining chip. It itself didn't mind going back to slumber, but being thrown into some other dimension right after reawakening? What was that about? Balance Breaker? You think that's difficult for me? Hikaru gave a faint smile. Once he entered the gear's inner space, Hikaru had already figured out the rules for triggering Balance Breaker. Allegedly, it required a major mental shift or intense emotional surge, sadness, joy, excitement, sorrow, fear, etc. But that wasn't the only route. Hikaru's will and conviction were far firmer than most. Like the sun always there, whether you feel it or not. As a result, from the moment he got his hands on the gear, he could already push it to Balance Breaker. Back in reality, the emerald jewel on the gauntlet gave off a dazzling glow. Crimson flames engulfed Hikaru's body while azure energy crackled like lightning around him. A fiery red armor materialized wave-like and wrapped around his body. In the blink of an eye, Hikaru was encased in crimson armor, now standing over 2 meters tall, with a red metal dragon's tail extending from his spine. The aura billowed like magma, blowing away the nearby junk. Surging power flooded Hikaru's entire being. In this state, his strength rivaled that of devil kings from the underworld. He might still be below someone like Surge's, a transcendent, but at least he could measure up to Seraphil's level. Unlike learned skills, a sacred gear doesn't require painstaking practice. Its own nature is already max level. The difference is how much a user can draw out. Like a handgun, no matter who wields it, the bullet's firepower doesn't change assuming you can shoot accurately. Of course, merely matching a demon king wouldn't satisfy Hikaru. He knew the boosted gear had another domain beyond Balance Breaker, the scale mail of domination, Baryon Mode or Juggernaut Drive, or commonly referred to as the Dragon Faction's Juggernaut Drive. Up to now, no Red Dragon Emperor host had managed it fully. While some forcibly tried, they ultimately died. 2 main reasons. 1. Past hosts couldn't endure all of Drake's power, using Juggernaut Drive caused their bodies to collapse. 2. Deep inside the Longinus consciousness space lay the grudge-filled remnants of past Red Dragon Emperor hosts. Once entering Juggernaut Drive, these resentful souls would assault the user's spirit, causing total mental breakdown. Still, Hikaru felt he could handle it. Partner. How did you do that? I've never seen anyone master Balance Breaker in such a short time. Drake exclaimed, his world rocked. Even the most monstrous geniuses he'd met needed at least a year of rigorous effort, plus an intense emotional outburst to barely unlock Balance Breaker. Yet Hikaru, emotions calm, power stable, he wasn't even panting from the burden of his first transformation. Is this guy even human? Because I'm a genius. Hikaru answered coolly. Of course he wasn't about to reveal his secrets. Balance Breaker gives quite a nice boost, though it's a shame the face design is a bit ugly. Hikaru caught a glimpse of himself in a nearby full-length mirror. While his body shape and general look seemed imposing, the only drawback was two upturned golden metal whiskers on his helmet. If they'd been placed on the forehead, it would have been perfect. Purely in terms of style, Hikaru actually felt the White Dragon Emperor's balance breaker form looked cooler. So, let's talk about our arrangement. Hikaru continued. And to make up for dumping you in the spirit world later, I'll thoroughly defeat this generation's White Dragon Emperor so you can settle your grudge. A moment ago, Drake was sulking, but upon hearing that, it perked up instantly. After all, it and Albion, the White Dragon Emperor, had always been mortal enemies. Long ago, they'd crash into battlefields with no regard for the larger war among three factions. Even sealed into sacred gears, every generation's Red and White Dragon Emperor hosts would inevitably clash. Both sides' wish was to defeat the other. Once Hikaru suggested it, Drake agreed immediately, no hesitation. The spirit world? Fine. Sleeping there might not be so bad anyway. Chapter 40, Family. After Hikaru proposed the terms of their deal, Drake quickly reached an agreement with him, promising full support. However, when Hikaru brought up training in the Tyrant Dragon form, Drake was taken aback. With a trembling voice almost as though showing concern, it said, Partner, could you not be in such a hurry? The Tyrant Dragon isn't something you can master that easily. Many of my previous hosts died trying to train for it. We're not rushing. We can take our time. The Tyrant Dragon statefully unleashes the Red Dragon Emperor's power. Drake knew very well how fearsome it had once been, rivaling even the transcendence of the underworld. The top-tier forces of heaven, or those so-called monitor of God's children, never mattered to it before. But colossal power often comes with a steep price. No human body could endure that burden. Come on, partner, be honest with me. Did you run into some trouble? Are you being hunted by someone powerful? No. Then why are you so determined to grow stronger, so soon? If I have this power, of course I want to develop it. I'm not someone who'd just leave a nuclear weapon unused, only to rely on a handgun. Hikaru replied, expression unchanged. I might not use it right away, but I can't afford not to have it. On hearing this, Drake realized just how unwavering this man's will was, impossible to sway. Unable to persuade him otherwise, Drake could only cooperate. Of course, compared to unlocking the balance breaker, pursuing the Tyrant Dragon was far more difficult. Setting aside whether host's body and mind could handle the Red Dragon Emperor in its prime, Hikaru was more concerned about the restless souls sealed deep within the sacred gear. According to Drake, once the Tyrant Dragon was activated, the consciousness of those tormented spirits would flood into his mind. Hikaru had zero desire to let such alien entities invade his head, so finding a way to purify the curse became the top priority. He conducted several experiments. Having made some headway, he decided to call it a day, hoping to resolve the Tyrant Dragon's secondary side effect within half a month. After reviewing his gains, Hikaru casually tidied the house. Then he noticed Asia timidly descending the stairs. Her delicate features showed hesitation, as though too shy to speak up. What's the matter? Hikaru asked. Could I take a bath? I don't even know where the bathroom is. She had been upstairs this whole time. Only after seeing the armor on Hikaru's body dissolve like a receding tide did Asia come out. She hadn't bathed for several days and could smell a faint odor on herself. A bath, huh? Hikaru thought for a few seconds, then asked, can you scrub my back? Huh? In a bathroom large enough for 10 people, steam condensed on the glass walls, filling the air with a hazy warmth that blurred one's vision. Hikaru sat on a small stool in front, while Asia, wrapped in only a towel, knelt behind him. Her pale skin, exposed to the warm, humid air, glowed alluringly under the lights. Even the strip of flesh between the towel's edge and her thighs was enough to spark the imagination. Only 3 people were in the bathroom, Hikaru, Estate, and Asia, who was in charge of washing his back. As for Drake, Hikaru had already tossed it into the spirit realm to sleep. Gazing at the broad expanse of his back, Asia's cheeks flushed with heat, and her arms trembled unconsciously, weakening her scrubbing pressure. A bit more force. Sorry. She apologized instantly, gripping the towel and rubbing away. Having suffered 2 betrayals already, she dreaded once again being abandoned. She wanted Hikaru not to dislike her. She'd handle all the household chores, if only he wouldn't cast her out. No need to apologize. You're one of us now, so just relax. Hikaru's somewhat carefree voice drifted over. In the past, he'd asked Estate to help wash his back, but the sword spirit's notion of light pressure often left him with injuries. We were one of us? At these words, Asia suddenly froze. Then tears the size of peas began trickling from her eyes. But she recovered quickly, wiping away her tears and murmuring, sorry, I just got too happy. No one's ever said that to me before. Hikaru. What are we, Now. Friends, family, companions, whatever you want to call it. Those words struck Asia's heart like a profound blow. Family. I finally have a family. Tears streaked her face, yet she smiled brightly.